everyone. This is the Wednesday, July 15th, 2020 morning session of the Portland City Council. Good morning, Carla. Can you please call the roll?
Good morning, Mayor. Hardesty?
Here.
Udaly?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Wheeler?
Here. Under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by video and teleconference, and the city has made several avenues available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is available to the public on the city's YouTube channel, eGovPDX, www.portlandoregon.gov, and Channel 30. The public can also provide written testimony to the council by emailing the council clerk at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact to promote physical distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your patience, flexibility, and understanding as we seek to manage through these challenging times. And with that, we'll hear the rules of order and decorum from legal counsel. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the City Council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please be aware that all council meetings are recorded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Karen, first up is communications. If you could read the first individual, please.
Item 554, request of Harrison Osborne to address council regarding Stanton Street crime.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Harrison Osborne, and first off, I'd like to thank the City Council and the Mayor for your time today. We very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and we know that you're all really busy and have a lot on your plate. Today, you're going to hear from my fellow neighbors, and that includes the co-chair of the Elliott Neighborhood Association. We represent a greater coalition of residents as well as local churches and daycares on our block. We've been working together for months to come to potential solutions for the problem that we're facing, and we would like to use our time today to provide color to the issue, as well as work with the city to formally request some items that we feel might contribute to solving this crisis in our neighborhood. Today, we have occupied all of the communication spots, but the order of the speakers on the agenda is different than our planned order. So I'd like to request that we speak as a group.
That's not a problem if you can make it work. Ordinarily, if we were meeting in person, we'd bring you all up as one group since you're all speaking on the same subject and you're together.
Well, how I think it could work well, we practiced last night, is I will just introduce the next speaker and then—
Why don't we do this? Carla, why don't you read all of the names and we'll let them do it the way they think works for them. As long as you're all within your 3-minute time frame, that's acceptable to me. So Carla, why don't you read all 5 names, please?
Okay, item 555, request of Lauren Osborne to address council regarding Stanton Street crime. 556, request of Alan Rudwick to address council regarding Stanton Street crime. 557, request of Jessica Needham to address council regarding Stanton Street crime. And 558, request of Elliott Parr to address council regarding Stanton Street crime.
So Harrison, we'll do it this way. We'll let you orchestrate it, and collectively you have 15 minutes.
That is perfect. And then there's only one small change, which is we would like to formally request that Jimmy Wilson take the spot of Alan Rudwick.
Without objection, that's fine.
Okay.
Again, Carla, if you could start the clock, we'll give you 15 minutes for all of you, but I'm going to cut you off at 15 minutes. So watch the time.
Thank you very much. So thank you again. Just before we get into it, we really wanted to preface this conversation that we understand this might not be the ideal time for the city to take action. We're not blind to the nightly protests and turmoil that's facing our great city, and we really appreciate everything that you all are doing to keep our citizens safe during this time. Part of the reason that we are here, though, is we feel like our personal safety and livability of the neighborhood is under serious jeopardy, and we implore your support before things escalate and innocent people start to get hurt. The situation that we want to brief you on is regarding the area at North Williams Street and Northeast Stanton. We sent a memo dated June 25th that recaps some of the issues. I would like to briefly summarize the situation that we are facing. The northeast corner of Williams and Stanton is a hotbed for illegal activity, highlighted by the open drug dealing that occurs along the south face of Immaculate Heart Catholic Church. This activity occurs on a daily basis from sunrise to almost midnight. This drug activity regularly causes many negative effects, such as verbal altercations, which can quickly escalate to physical violence. Residents have witnessed gunshots, assaults, and fistfights. Moreover, corresponding activity stemming from the drug trade also includes prostitution, gambling on the sidewalks, and public urination and defecation. What's worse is that illicit activity has spilled onto the property of the local residents who live on Stanton Street. I moved to this area about 4 years ago, and the situation has drastically deteriorated over that time. This type of activity was once occurring only on the fringes of our neighborhood, but is now in our faces every single day. Personally, there was one instance where somebody on drugs entered my garage while I was in there while fleeing from an angry person who was threatening to kill them. I have a young toddler daughter and a pregnant wife. They are really the main reasons that I'm here today, because I need to do everything I can to help keep them safe. We've reached out to police to meet with us over 10 times, but have not had the ability to even secure a meeting. And now the neighborhood response team for Elliott has been disbanded. This vacuum in law enforcement has exacerbated the problem to a full-fledged public safety crisis for the block. In addition to the letter which we sent on June 25th, there is now significant property damage with multiple reports of slashed tires and vandalism in the neighborhood. The environment that exists today on Stanton Street is unsafe, lawless, and dangerous for the residents. I'd like to introduce my neighbor, Elliott, who can elaborate on his experience with what we are dealing with.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members.
Morning.
Morning. I, like our mayor, attended a PIL high school and have tremendous love for this city. I take pride in being a true local. Our city is progressive, and I've watched our city transform over the decades. My girlfriend and I bought our house in the Elliott neighborhood, knowing full well the history and culture surrounding our house. We toured the house multiple times and saw the park and the activity on Stanton. We looked forward to being part of the community. We live 20 yards from Williams Avenue and are directly across the street from Dawson Park. Our front porch looks out to Immaculate Heart, or what we call the Pink Church. We have met some of the local people that hang out in front of the Pink Church. We know many by names: Shay Shay, Wickham, Cornell, Lena, Lenny. Unfortunately, our friendliness and openness to be good neighbors is not being reciprocated by all who share Stanton Street, which is one of the prime locations for drug dealing and prostitution. We have stepped on crack pipes, cleaned up human feces, toilet paper, and vomit from our front porch and sidewalk. We have constantly cleaned up cigarette butts, litter, and other debris. We have to shoo individuals off of our porch, individuals that oftentimes are a danger to themselves and others from drugs or alcohol or both. And we have many photos of this activity. Oftentimes we watch drug deals go down, we watch people get high, we watch fights break out right in front of our house. This activity has ramped up lately and has now led to speeding, human waste on the sidewalk, and unsanitary and unsafe conditions, which is very difficult in this time of COVID. There have been days where my girlfriend does not feel safe to leave the house. One day she called me at work and she could not leave the porch because there was a knife and a crack pipe and a man smoking crack on our front porch. It was just a dangerous situation. Unfortunately, our benevolence is starting to be taken for granted. Later on, my fellow neighbors will propose solutions to help the situation. I'll now introduce my neighbor, Jessica.
Hello, my name is Jessica Needham. I was born and raised in North Portland, and I live on Northeast Stanton Street, adjacent from Dawson Park. I'm here today to address the safety for those who live and work on Stanton Street. This includes the residents, the school children, and those that spend their days on the block. On any given day, you can walk down Stanton Street and witness illegal drugs being solicited, drug use, violent assaults, as well as verbal altercations, lives being threatened, and peace being disturbed. This is a worsening problem, and it has been for a long time, with no response or accountability from city officials or law enforcement. The happenings in our neighborhood go unattended to and frankly feel ignored. As residents, we need help. We are really demanding for the safety and protection of Stanton Street. It's only a matter of time before someone seriously gets hurt. Someone coming home from school, or myself walking my dog with my family, or a child playing at the park or the preschool. We are in constant threat of assaults, injury, indecent exposure, and even possibly death. These issues stem from the unpredictability of the drugs being dealt and used. Living on Stanton Street, I have personally witnessed weapons drawn, guns threatening others, and shots being fired. Just days ago, I was devastated to witness a man assault a woman, punching her directly in the face, and then later again, disturbingly, witnessed a young lady attack an older woman in a walker, beating her. Most recently, I witnessed a man sitting across from the preschool, holding a glass pipe and a lighter in one hand, and in his other hand, down his pants masturbating with the other. While not being limited to these examples, these are regularly occurring activities that we as residents witness on a daily basis. We have grave concerns for the well-being of those that congregate in and around Dawson Park. We see zero effort to curb the drug solicitation and public usage. We see prostitution on our sidewalks as a form of tender. We see violence as an acceptable means of being. We see mental illness being ignored and pushed to the fringes of community concern. And we see absolutely nothing being done to make this stretch of our neighborhood a safe, hospitable, and prosperous refuge for all. Because of these concerns, we have had to band together to bring awareness to these issues, even though we know each and every one of you listening have witnessed the disparaging acts taking place on Stanton Street every time you have driven, biked, or walked up Williams Avenue. Elliott neighborhood has a history of removing the problem instead of fixing it, so this is your chance to do something right. Thank you for your time, and please let me introduce my neighbor, Lauren.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Lauren Osborne, and I have lived on this block for 4 years. The drug dealers who work on our corner have weapons, as do many of their customers. They know there is a lack of police presence in this area, and they are bullying the residents. As I walk in front of my own house, when I look over at them, they often shout at me, "Mind your own effing business." How would the members of this city council feel if you lived on this block? I personally feel powerless, afraid, and isolated. Today, we are asking you to step in and help us solve this problem. We also ask you to empower our community's leaders to help solve the problem. Specifically, leaders like Jimmy Wilson, the co-chair of our neighborhood association. Jimmy and his coalition of church and community leaders know many of the people who are engaging in the illegal activities, and they are willing to talk to them on behalf of our neighborhood. What Jimmy and our community leaders lack is the city's support. I will let Jimmy speak for himself, but my request is that you empower leaders like him to help lead change. Jimmy, over to you.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Wilson. I've been in the Portland area all my life, over 60 years. And right now I represent ENA, Elliott Neighborhood Association. I'm also the board president of ECN. And what I'm seeing that these people in our neighborhoods are having a situation in the area down by Dawson Park, which is the area that I'm responsible for at this time. What I'm seeing in this situation is, I don't think the answer to this question is to help. I'm about solutions, and I'm looking for a solution here. And number one solution here is, I think that I should develop an organization, and I can, an organization of Black churches of faith. Leaders, like we have about 6 to 7 Black leader churches in the city. And we have about 3 to 4 of them in the Elliott neighborhood. And if y'all don't know, but his name is Henderson at I think it's First Baptist Church. I can gather these leaders together and we can come up with a plan to help fix this problem. But I need your help. I'm working for you, as you know, Elliott Neighborhood Association, NECN. I think it's under the leadership of Coley O'Donnell. But anyway, moving forward, I want to say, I believe at this time, white people cannot come in the park and talk to Black people about this situation because of the safetyness of what's going on now. I'm requesting that you give me funding to help with this problem by me going out getting a Black security team together to patrol the park, number one. I'm requesting also that you open the bathrooms in Dawson Park at all times. I'm here to try to restore the relationship of Elliott neighborhood. Now, if you notice the past, this kind of was similar back into the 70s when we deal with Irvington Park, how Irvington Park had all them jam sections and all that. And then at the end of the day, they put up no parking signs around the park. And it kind of did a disfavor for the Black community, but the Black community had to see why they did that. And because people couldn't get home from after work, they were blocking traffic, they were doing all this other kind of stuff. I'm trying to prevent this from happening to my park. My park is Dawson Park, and it's the only park that where Black people right now can come and gather together. And I'm not trying to take that park out of here because of the fact of what's going on. I'm solution-based, and I think that we can solve this problem with your help. So if you understand this, I need Chief Lavelle. I need Chief Lavelle to come in. I want him to come to these meetings I'm finna formulate and come unsuited. I want him to come as a natural, plainclothes person. I need 5 Black officers that works under him that come and join these meetings. I'm working on getting Urban League to get involved in this also. We need this to happen, and we need this to happen now before the monster really comes out. And during COVID, we need safety as far as the bathrooms need to be open. And now, I'm not for drugs. I'm not for people using the bathrooms in front of people's houses. I'm not for that, because I'm sure you ain't for that either. But here's the situation. Dawson Park is a gathering place. We need other places to go. We need other businesses to represent. We need space. These people need space. And if you put everybody in one little space of a park, it's gonna cause an overflow of whatever, you know. So to protect my neighbors in Elliott neighborhood, I need a Black security team, as I mentioned earlier, with the funding from the city council. They help me organize this situation. I need your help, and I need your help now, because when you look at the neighborhood association boards and the co-chairs and the chairs, they all working for you and to keep our neighborhood safe. So empower me to do what I have to do to keep these people safe. This is Jimmy Wilson. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jimmy. And does that, Harrison, does that complete your panel?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Very good. Commissioner Hardesty has her hand raised. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank all of you for your testimony. What I actually thought that all our parks bathrooms were open during COVID-19. So I am very concerned that somebody's made a decision that Dawson Park's bathroom is not open. Let me say what you and your neighbors are experiencing is a lack of housing that people can afford to live in the city of Portland that has been exacerbated by COVID-19. And I appreciate you organizing, coming, sharing with us what your experience is. What the city has not added any additional beds during COVID, with the exception of the 3 outdoor camps that we have downtown. We, as a city, have not dealt with this emergency, I think, in a way that actually helped us get people into where they need to be. But I appreciate you coming. I will make no comment on your request because, of course, we don't make those kind of decisions during communications. But I would offer you to reach out to my office to have a conversation about how we can collectively work on these problems all over the city. I can tell you that we have way too many people living on our streets. And when COVID is over, we're going to have a lot more. So if we don't figure out how to do it now, we're going to be overwhelmed with people living on our street with no access to anything. And I don't blame people who are congregating, notwithstanding the violence and the drug use, notwithstanding that. But when people have nowhere to go, they don't go anywhere. And that we have an obligation as a city to actually help people be able to be safe, regardless of their economic situation. And personally, I just feel like we have failed, and we have failed over and over again. So willing to work with you, but again, I will make no comment on your request because that's not what we do here. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd also like to comment. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. I absolutely hear and understand the frustrations that you're experiencing. I believe that the city does have a presence in Dawson Park. I'll confirm that, but it was my understanding that our Office of Violence Prevention actually did have partnerships in Dawson Park, but I'll check on that. I'm concerned that you're saying you did not get any police response at all. If you're calling 911 for a police emergency, you should be getting a response. So I'd like more information about that. So I'll have my public safety advisor, Robert King, reach out to one of you. Harrison, are you sort of the ringleader here? Should you be the contact?
I'm happy to play that role and connect with your contact as well to provide him amplifying data on when we've contacted the police. And I think when I referred to contacting the police, it was more to engage with them and set up a meeting to describe the.
Okay. Yeah. And
when we call 911, they do come.
Yeah. I'm not going to make excuses for them, but I will tell you that the last 7 weeks of demonstrations has pretty much pulled in all resources from all across the city and focused on downtown. It's no consolation, but your neighborhood is not the only one that's being impacted by this. And I'm very mindful of what you're saying. And I will do what I can to set up a meeting and make sure that happens. And I'll deploy my public safety advisor to contact you and follow up with that. Jimmy, thank you for the efforts that you're undertaking personally there and the work that you've done in the community. I think the only way we're going to address these community-wide problems is through community engagement. I don't know whether your strategy is exactly the right strategy or not, but I know this isn't going to be solved by policing. There, as Commissioner Hardesty mentioned, are a number of issues that have come home to roost related to housing, to economic opportunity, to education. The list goes on and on. We obviously have an addiction crisis in our community that's not addressed the way it should be, a mental health crisis. I mean, by the time somebody just sets up shop on your front stoop and they don't seem to understand that there's a problem with that, it is probable that you are dealing with somebody who needs some extra help. And I think there's a compassionate and effective response that could be brought to bear there as well. None of these things will probably get fixed quickly, but I will commit that we will work with you and that we are hearing you and that we appreciate your being here. So you should expect the next call to be from somebody from my office.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I speak?
Yeah, of course, Jimmy.
Mr. Mayor and Joanne, the problem we facing here is not people that don't have a place to go. The problem here is that people are doing their own thing in front of people's houses. The problem also is that, and I must admit to this, is that the bathrooms are open, but they shut them off in August, around August, where they don't be open at all. We want them open all the time, for these crises of COVID, for number one.
Right.
And I understand the fact that you say what you cannot do, what you cannot do. Well, what do ENA or NECN stand for? I'm just not on this team for this to be a title. I volunteered for these positions because of the simple fact that it wasn't no people of color on these teams, and they was making decisions that affect us all the way back to the 1958. When this stuff started in the 71s and the 70s, when the neighborhood association started. So here's what I'm saying is, I need help here. And I'm tired of hearing this pass the buck to John or Mary. I need help now. And these people in our neighborhood are being affected. If you got me working for you and I'm making a request, and you say you're going to give me a word of advice of somebody going to do this, that, or the other, Mayor, that's been going on for too many years.
Jimmy, let me just say that this is the communication spot. This is not the spot where we determine who's going to get money for whatever project they're working on. I think you've heard loud and clear that the mayor and I are both willing to work with your neighborhood association, but there is no magic solution. We are in a state of crisis. We are in an economic downturn. We have devastation on our street in just about every neighborhood you can imagine. And so the reality is we cannot solve this problem for you today, but we have offered to work with you and your neighborhood association to make that happen. That's all we can give you to this morning. Call me and we'll set an appointment and we will talk. But I acknowledge that your neighborhood is in crisis. I want you to acknowledge there are many, many neighborhoods in crisis having the same experience. And we are willing to work with you. So let's end this conversation now. I appreciate you volunteering. I have lived here for 30 years. I have seen what happened in Northeast Portland and how the neighborhood representation radically changed. So I know this, right? But what I also know is we can't solve this problem this morning. And we're willing to work with you to solve it, but this is not the place to do it.
Okay. Next time we talk about this situation, Joanne and the mayor, I like to be around the people who can make the decision.
Well, we are the decision makers. We're just not the decision makers during communication.
That's what I'm talking about.
We will do that, Jimmy, but not here, not now. Call my office, we'll set an appointment, and we will bring decision makers to the table.
Yeah, and Jimmy, thank you, and your passion is contagious. I'm actually appreciating the back and forth, and I'm enjoying it, and I think this is how we get stuff done. And that's frankly what I hope communications does, is it spurs this kind of a dialogue and leads to a path forward. I did just confirm, it turns out I'm not only the police commissioner, contrary to public opinion, I'm also the parks commissioner. And I did just confirm that the restrooms are open 24/7, plus there is a portable on site. And I'm hearing what you're saying, Jimmy, keep it open beyond August, and we will most certainly look into that. I'm not sure why they closed it in August. I just don't know. But I don't see any reason why we could not keep it open, particularly when we have this crisis on the streets. So thank you all. There's obviously much follow-up to do on this. This is a good beginning, and I appreciate you all coming in. Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carla, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Have any items been withdrawn?
We've had no requests, Mayor.
Please call the roll.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz. Fritz,
Let's see. Is she muted? Where is she? I don't even see her. Oh, I'm on the wrong hand. No, I don't see her.
yeah, I see her. She's not muted. Commissioner Fritz, can you hear
Oh,
us?
you're right. You're right. Hang on. I know how to solve this.
We're going old school again.
Yeah, hang on.
Hello, you've reached the
Oh no, I've been thwarted. Hang on. Hey, can you hear me? Commissioner Fritz? Commissioner Fritz? Oh, she texted me, she's gonna call back in. Let's just wait a sec, Carla, and wait for her to call back in.
Certainly.
I need to pull up some notes here anyway. Commissioner Fritz, can you hear us yet? I'll just try calling her again.
Hello?
Hi, Commissioner, are you not able to log in? Okay, she says she's logged in and she should be able to cast her vote.
Fritz,
Sorry. Aye, sorry.
Wheeler,
Aye, the consent agenda is adopted. That takes us to our first item on the regular agenda, item number 563, please.
accept and appropriate $28,401,261 in 2020 Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funds and delegate authority to the Program Bureau Directors to execute contracts and agreements funded under the program.
Thank you, colleagues. This item is a proposal to allocate the funding of the City of Portland that the City of Portland received from Congress through the Cares Act roughly 10 weeks ago. The COVID-19 pandemic requires immediate response rooted in the values of interdependence, mutual solidarity, shared purpose, and collective action. We know that we're all better off when we're all healthy, especially the most vulnerable amongst us. We must adhere to the 3 W's: wear a face covering, watch your physical distance, staying at least 6 feet from people that we are not in quarantine with, and wash your hands well and often. At the same time, we're trying to lower our infection rate and the risk of spreading the disease we see the ripple effects to our economy and to people's livelihoods. Local governments need immediate and significant resources to address the public health crisis and the related issues that jeopardize people's livelihoods. Congress recognized this need by allocating funding directly to cities through this act. To help us develop this proposal, the city engaged with community and jurisdictional partners over the past several months to understand what the most urgent community and public health needs were and what investments would have the most impact. The ideas, values, and priorities that emerged through those important conversations with community informed the work of the city's PDX Cares Task Force, comprised of a number of bureau directors and staff from our offices who assisted Council in shaping the package of investments that we're considering today. That task force has been hard at work on this for more than a month, and I want to acknowledge the collective time, expertise, and effort that's represented in this package. Thank you to the many community members who engaged with the county and the city Joint Volunteer Information Center, the Economic Impact Task Force, work groups led by Prosper Portland, and the COVID-19 Resilience Resolution Council adopted on May 20th, establishing the core priorities that will guide our long-term COVID-19 response. And a special thank you to Dr. Markeisha Smith and her team at the Office of Equity and Human Rights for developing the COVID-19 Equity Toolkit to help guide our decision-making as we continue to respond to this emergency and plan for our recovery. I believe that we will pull through this crisis as a city by working together. The proposal represents our shared values, and these investments will help keep Portlanders housed, fed, and employed through the worst of the crisis. We're focusing on providing direct relief to those who are the most impacted and most vulnerable to the impacts of the pandemic, prioritizing BIPOC communities and individuals that identify as disabled, elderly, or homeless. I'm proud that it also includes support for our government partners across Multnomah County, including East Multnomah County cities. This virus shows us that we're dependent on each other. Our futures and well-being are intertwined. We must pull together to demand the testing, treatment, and time off we all need to get well or to stay well. We realize that these funds are not enough to serve the staggering needs of our community. I believe the proposal will help keep thousands of Portlanders in their homes and assist struggling small businesses and nonprofits to stay afloat as we weather the pandemic and the economic downturn. We'll hear from Chief Administrative Officer Tom Reinhardt, Project Lead GN Kim, and then we have an opportunity to ask questions of the allocation task force leadership and take testimony. Lastly, colleagues, I'll flag that this is a non-emergency item, which means it will be heard today, passed to a second reading next week, and then be effective a full month later. I don't know whether we will be able to reach a consensus by the close of our conversation today. Reasonable people can disagree, but I hope we work towards that consensus. And I want to preview my strong feeling that we need to get this money out to the community as fast as possible. Not 5 weeks from now, but today, if possible. With that, I'll turn it over to Tom and GN. Tom? Commissioner Hardesty has her hand raised. I apologize. Commissioner Hardesty.
Sorry, Mayor, I didn't put it back down.
Oh, no worries. Tom Reinhardt, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Tom Reinhardt. I'm proud to be the city's Chief Administrative Officer. To reiterate what the Mayor just said, I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this and add council offices, executives, and staff who worked very hard on this over the last several weeks, and my fellow directors on the task force and all their support and their teams for making time to really drive this over the last several weeks. I also want to thank some real stellar individual performers, Sheila Craig, Ginger Damron, Jian Kim, Jessica Kennard, and Ruth Levine, who were instrumental in supporting the task force through these difficult and complicated discussions. To be clear, we're here to request that Council approve the appropriation of Cares Act local relief funds into our current budget, to approve the PDX Cares relief package allocations, and lastly, to delegate contracting authority to the Bureau directors so we can disperse the funds in a timely manner, as the mayor just alluded to. As part of this presentation, we are going to briefly walk through the following three things. Our community outreach and engagement process, which the mayor touched on, which was extensive and thorough. The city's decision-making process, how we got to this point. And we're also, of course, going to give you a high-level overview of what the PDX Cares relief package will fund. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jian Kim to walk you through it. Jian?
Jian's muted.
Jian, can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Now we can. Thank you. Yep.
Oh, great.
Welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
We've lost the PowerPoint though.
It's coming back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Good morning again. This is Jian Kim, Strategic Project Manager for the Office of Management and Finance. I just first want to express my gratitude to be a public servant and to have a role in supporting the city and this process. As Tom noted, I'm going to walk through the process that we use to determine the Cares Act allocations, and then discuss what program areas were funded. So to ground us very quickly, the city received $114 million in state and local relief funds as part of a $2 trillion Cares Act, which was signed into law on March 27th. When we received the funding, there were 4 overarching provisions. These funds could not be used for lost revenue. They were only for necessary expenditures related to COVID-19 response or relief. Expenses could not be accounted for in our current budget, and the expenditures could only be incurred between March 1st and December 30th. The intended use of these funds is really for immediate coronavirus relief. To aid in the decision-making process on how these funds were allocated, the city took the following action and solicited feedback from our community partners. First, the City Council passed a resolution on May 20th that the mayor had just mentioned and articulated our city values and acted as our North Star when making decisions about the city's recovery from this pandemic. We reviewed data from the ECC's Joint Volunteer Information Center, JVIC, to understand the immediate and future needs of our most vulnerable communities. And the Economic Recovery Task Force, led by Prosper Portland, provided us with both programmatic and policy recommendations, as well as ways we can provide financial support to our struggling businesses and nonprofit communities. And lastly, our Bureau directors engage with their leadership teams and community partners to provide us with over 200 ways we can support our community, our public health response, and increase our operational resilience. As part of as the mayor mentioned, Dr. Smith and her team in the Office of Equity and Human Rights developed a guide specifically for COVID-19 relief and recovery efforts. And we've used this toolkit in multiple steps in our decision-making process, and will continue to use these tools for accountability. The Joint Volunteer Information Center is a city-county program facilitated by the Bureau of Emergency Management. Every week, 14 JVIC liaisons field resource requests from 91 community-based organizations, or CBOs, that serve BIPOC communities, individuals with disabilities, and or the elderly. The requests they've been tracking fell into 5 themes: food security, rent and utility assistance, hygiene supplies, connecting individuals with services, and bridging the digital divide. They've done a tremendous job coordinating the basic needs of our underserved Portlanders, and they've built trust and credibility amongst the CBOs which will act as a roadmap when reaching these communities in the future. The Economic Recovery Task Force was led by Prosper Portland, and they engage with businesses and nonprofits through the task force meetings, listening sessions, and other community meetings to understand the needs of the business and nonprofit sectors. Along with the request for financial support to our business community, the Economic Recovery Task Force made a range of policy recommendations, requested the city's advocacy for state and federal funding, and proposed investment in community programs like bridging the digital divide. And lastly, we asked our bureau directors to help determine both internal operations and community needs. Like the JVIC and Prosper, many of our bureau directors consulted with community partners before making recommendations for the CARES funding. The ideas that were submitted from bureau leadership fell into three major categories: community relief programs, public health adaptations, and internal operational resiliency. As you can tell, there were a lot of overlap over the three different groups. Items like rent assistance, household assistance, digital divide, and business support were common themes amongst them all. And just to talk about our decision-making process, as part of this process, the council identified a task force comprised of bureau directors and city council staff, to help determine how the CARES Act resources should be allocated. Over the course of 6 meetings, the task force reviewed the funding ideas, the input from the community, and used the equity toolkit as part of the recommendation process. After multiple discussions, City Council determined the highest and best use of these funds was to distribute almost all these funds for community relief. And so we're going to walk through what was funded. So this slide represents the funding areas that are in this ordinance. Of the $114 million, only 9.1 will be used to fund the city's COVID-19 response. These expenses include everything from cleaning supplies, disinfecting supplies, PPE for our first responders, and staff time redeployed to the Emergency Coordination Center. The allocations for Multnomah and East County cities assist our jurisdictional partners with mitigating public health response related expenses. The 19.1 to homeless response will fund both city-county COVID-related homeless services, as well as some city-only pilot projects like outdoor shelters and tiny home programs. You'll see that small bubble, $550K, is allocated to fund the safe public spaces.
Could I stop you?
Yeah.
Jan, could I stop you for just a sec? Commissioner Hart had a question on something you said. I don't want to get too far before the question answered.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jen. I want to go back. The first chart that I saw about the 19.1 million said that had already been decided early on. Where was that decision made, and what is the specific use of that 19.1 million?
So about 2.6 million of that will be for what we call our city projects. So that will be for the St. John's tiny home village. And then some of that will be going to is funding our community center shelters. And then another portion of that will be funding our outdoor campsites. About 16.5 million is.
Jen, excuse me, yeah. Jen, I'm trying to get to when the first time I had an update, somebody said that decision was made, and I'm trying to figure out who decided that 19.1 million would go to homeless responses.
It's part of our city-county cost-sharing agreement with the. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, yeah. It's part of our city-county cost sharing agreement for the Joint Office of Homeless Response. And so they developed a budget, which was, I think, and Mark is on the line if you want to interject, but they developed a budget as part of our homeless response, and we presented part of that budget at the City Council work session on May 26th. And so there was some dialogue around what those expenses would be and some questions about it.
Right. That was when we were asking to rent hotel rooms, right? And I think everybody on the council was like a little appalled at the 40 million requests. Now we're at 19.1 million. And I will ask Mark if he's going to weigh in later. I will ask him directly, because I'm trying to figure out where these decisions were made before the work group came together to start making other decisions. Because some of these decisions were made outside of this process, and I need to know how those decisions were made. So thanks, Jen.
Sure. This is the last slide, so I'll walk through these and then we'll open it up for questions, and Mark can chime in at that time.
Thank you.
So I'll just go very quickly. 550,000 allocated for Safe Public Spaces campaigns, specifically focused on our transportation system and the public right-of-way, as well as expanding the outreach for the Cares Wheels program. 3.5 million will be used to create up to 5,000 technology kits, which include a Chromebook, internet vouchers, and culturally specific training. 4.35 million will be used to fund arts and culture programs, including BIPOC artist grants, support for our venues, and assistance to the Portland Five. 15 million will fund both block grants and other grant programs that serve small businesses, and 20.4 million will go to household assistance, including food security programs managed by PBEM and parks, as well as cash assistance programs that will be managed through the Housing Bureau. And then lastly, 17 million will also be dispersed to the Housing Bureau to fund programs like rent assistance, BIPOC mortgage assistance, and mortgage counseling to help people navigate the foreclosure prevention programs that are out there.
And
I just want to know
about the how. Are we providing housing support for public housing that the city owns or other governments own, or is this for anybody who needs rental assistance?
Shannon, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Commissioner Hardesty, thank you for the question. This will be community-based rent support for individuals to apply through community-based organizations to receive. So the answer to your question is it will not be funding city-based, city-owned housing or publicly owned housing. We would be precluded in any case from giving ourselves funding to replace our own existing resources based on the Cares Act allocation.
And how extensive, thank you for that answer, Shannon. How extensive is this community-based support that will be reaching out to people to provide assistance?
I'm sorry, how extensive is the network of the community-based providers? So we are and have been working with the county and the Joint Office and Home Forward on using some of the existing networks that we currently have within the community. And so the county has already allocated additional resources to culturally specific community-based providers within the short-term rent assistance network. Those providers include El Programa, IRCO, NEA, NARA, Latino Network, SEI, and Urban League. And we are, in addition to that, working with the culturally specific partners to determine who they can and who they do partner with in the community within the additional networks that are out there, so that they can take soft referrals and allocations from community partners. And then finally, as we look to program these resources, I will say that the rent support coming out of the CARES Act is about $15 million, but that is on top of additional resources that have been made available through the state's CARES funding allocation and or city and Multnomah County actions in the past. So we're actually trying to program $35 million in rent support. And so as we look to the existing networks and what they can handle, we'll also be looking to potentially bring on new partners that can provide referrals and work with the community to then have a fiscal and administrative backstop, or someone who's actually doing some of the federal reporting paperwork. If you haven't done it before, it's very complicated to try to train up in a couple of months. But we're trying to create those use those natural networks that exist within the provider community, shore up the provider community, and then see who else we can bring on based on what we believe are the estimates for what the natural networks can't handle right now. Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
It does, and it makes me very concerned, because if we have our network that we have built relationships with over a period of time, there's a lot of organizations, and I will use the food security as an example. The food security group has identified over 100 community-based organizations that they are providing food security support for. And what I know the county and the city and probably the state does is they have about 5 or 6 or 7 organizations that they work with, which means thousands of people will never know that these resources are available. And I am very concerned that every government is putting money into all the same organizations, which means that their network are the only people who become aware that these resources are available. And to me, that is a very narrow perspective when we know the economic devastation that our community is suffering. Those organizations can't cover the needs of all the people who are in need in our community. And so if we're going to just use what we've always used with the same networks we've always used, that says to me that there are going to be thousands of people, once they become aware that these resources are available, these resources will be gone and they will have no access to it. So thank you. I guess my question has been answered, and I'm less comfortable now than I was.
Commissioner, can I respond? I'm sorry. May I apologize, Commissioner, if I did not provide a response that actually directly answered your question. So I think, and I'm sorry if I had a confusing answer. We are trying to actually expand the networks of folks that have access points to make sure that this rent assistance is more broadly available. So if you didn't hear that from my answer, that's what I was trying to say.
I did not hear that from your answer. Thank you. And so what I know is that every time we've put money out the door, the money has been gone within hours. And most people never knew we were putting money out the door. What's going to be different this time to ensure that more people have access to resources?
So, Commissioner, I think one of the things that we're doing very deliberately is trying to be really careful about how we plan for and use this resource, and not just use those natural networks. Yes. They, of course, are the backbone and hub of the community's rent support, and we will utilize them. But we also are aware that there are other entry points that we need to create and other places that people need to receive those services. So we are working both to shore up the existing providers to expand their capacity, because it is hard to ask existing providers to continue to do more and more for the community without the staffing resources. And as I said, the joint office is going to, and county is going to provide those separately outside of this allocation. So I would be happy to talk to your office and work with you more on as we delineate how that programming and who those natural networks and who the new partners are going to be.
Thank you, Shannon. One last question. I don't want to belabor this point, but have you thought differently based on what the E-Board did yesterday and the resources that they have actually allocated to address some of these issues? How does this actually enhance more people having opportunity for resources, and how are we going to coordinate to make sure that we're not giving the same 5 to 7 organizations all the resources or 80% of the resources, and then everybody else is kind of left out?
So, Commissioner, the actions of the E-Board yesterday, I don't know how they're administratively programming those funds, but I can assure you that we will be working with the state to figure out what they are doing. Most of their allocations then sometimes directly flow to the local jurisdictions, which tends to be the Multnomah County. And so the coordination continues to be ongoing, both with the state implementers and the city implementers. I don't have enough information as of yesterday's actions to know what their implementation plans are. But we will be assuring that we're coordinating those funds. The other thing we're trying to do is make sure that our programming is is easy for everyone, meaning that we're not programming 5 or 6 different buckets of rent support with different rules.
Yes.
So, one of the things that we're working on as closely as we can with all of our partners is making sure that there's a streamlined application, so folks don't have to go to 7 different places. I have 7 different programs, and a simple process, simple rules as best we can with federal regulations and federal funding, and then distribution to those households. So, but we'll follow up more when we know how the state's planning on distributing. Thank you, though.
And I think we as a city council needs to know actually honestly how all these new emergency dollars like where they're going, because what I know is that most people don't belong to an organization. And so if they don't belong to an organization, how are they going to know that these resources are available? And if we haven't done a good job of actually making sure that we are giving equal access to as many people as necessary, then I am very concerned that we will continue to keep the status quo in place and not actually make sure that we are reaching out far and wide to all the people in our community who are in desperate need. Most of our folks don't belong to an organization. And most of the organizations can't take care of all the cultural needs of any specific organization. So I don't think we have a good handle on this. And I just think we just keep doing what we've always done. So thank you, Shannon. I will continue to listen.
Bailey has her hand up.
Commissioner Hardy, I just want to chime in here. We have thought a lot about those same concerns that you just articulated. One of the things that we've asked, that we will be asking are the program areas that are getting funded is to take a look at that subrecipient list. So all the organizations that will be receiving funding, and we plan to share that with council offices. So you understand before we make any agreements with anyone about who is getting funded. And so there's an opportunity there for council offices to engage. Well, secondarily,
thank you for that, Jen. Sorry to cut you off. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to be involved in making sure that I know where those dollars are going. So thank you.
Yeah. The secondarily, the thing about federal fundings is it's very difficult to navigate, especially for these smaller organizations, yes, to actually manage these funds. So the other thing that we decided to do here is to hire a resource that specializes in government grants and use that person to help these smaller organizations navigate the process, so they have a person to talk to ask questions about, so they're in compliance. And so we are making sure that we're providing some sort of safety net for these organizations that we may have not worked with before, to really give them the opportunity to participate in these programs, for us to reach out to different partners in a way that we haven't done before. So just know we are thinking very heavily about how to do things differently. I know that there's a lot of talk internally here about how we use the JVIC in terms of maybe we can't use a JVIC entity as a subrecipient.
What's a JVIC?
The Joint Volunteer Information Center through the Emergency Coordination Center, they've been doing all the work with 91 CBOs that are non-traditional. And so, we can use that network at the very minimum to alert their networks that there are housing and rental assistance opportunities. And like Shannon said, we really want things to be easy for folks. So we don't want all these different applications, but we do really want to network to these groups to ensure that they have they're first notified about these resources as soon as possible. And then just another point is that one of the things we're also working on is to ensuring that we're required to collect some information for the federal requirements, but we are trying to really collect as minimal data as possible, so it makes it so people who are maybe undocumented feel more comfortable with applying for these, or to access these funds. And so I hope that alleviates some of your concerns. We are really thinking about it, and thank you to the leadership of Dr. Smith, who has created this toolkit for us to really use at every step to ensure that we're really figuring out how to use these funds in a way that the most underserved populations or communities can access the rent assistance and food assistance and all the other programs. So.
And what networks do we have with
Commissioner Hardesty? Before you get to that question, can I go to Commissioner Udaley?
I'm sorry. Yes, I started in the chat, so I didn't want it to be lost.
No worries. Commissioner Udaley, then we'll come back to Commissioner Hardesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Jan hit on one of the things I wanted to mention is that JVIC does have an existing network of almost 100 culturally specific organizations, and I see no reason why we wouldn't use them to push information out. And then it was my understanding that the Housing Bureau is planning to directly incorporate at least 44 culturally specific organizations in addition to the main organizations that we often work with. So I don't think the challenge is getting the information out. The challenge is we don't have nearly enough resources to fill the need. And that leads me to my question, which is, do we have set criteria for who will qualify? I understand wanting to make it as easy as possible, but how are we prioritizing the people who are most vulnerable to eviction and have the greatest need during this crisis?
Commissioner, thank you for your, this is Shannon again from the Housing Bureau. Thank you for your question. What we are working on right now is an overall program design for the city and county funding so that, as I said, it is a streamlined process. We're trying to identify families that were below 50% AMI and are at the greatest risk of eviction post the eviction moratorium ending on September 30th. We are acutely aware that families will have approximately 6 months to make up for rent arrears, but if they are not current on their rent for October, they could face imminent eviction for failure to pay their rent. So putting that lens on the work of our community-based providers and making sure that we are prioritizing through the networks that exist in the community, those we've worked with and those we haven't in the past, making sure that we're reaching BIPOC communities. And especially Black, Indigenous, and Latinx, those that have been either hardest hit or unable to access, in the case of many folks who are undocumented, unable to access prior allocations of funding due to federal restrictions. So that is what our current program design is working with. But we also want to provide community partners some flexibility to make sure that they're reaching the households that are at greatest risk and providing them the resources that they need to make sure that they don't get evicted.
Thank you, Shannon. So I just want to acknowledge once again, this will not remotely cover the need. I'm deeply concerned about the coming housing crisis if the state and federal government doesn't take swift and dramatic action. And this isn't really the time for the conversation, but I think that we need to talk about providing eviction defense moving forward, because we are going to see a wave of thousands of evictions without some significant change. And Shannon, one more question. I understand you said that the city cannot use these funds to reimburse ourselves for lost rent revenue, but other affordable housing providers aren't precluded, are they?
Commissioner, this is Shannon again. No, they would not be. However, what we are doing there in our budget, we reallocated some federal home dollars and we have a 4.5 million of those funds available. It's a very awkward funding source, even more so than the federal Cares Act funding. And what we are planning on doing is actually using that allocation of resources for the affordable housing providers that we have regulated agreements with to apply on a for their tenants on a building-wide scale, and we would prioritize those resources for the affordable housing developments that have the highest percentage of BIPOC community members. We know, at least in terms of most of our buildings, the race and ethnicity of the heads of household. So we would, on a rolling basis, have folks, have building owners apply on behalf of their tenants for tenant-based rent for those funding, for that funds, and use those funds until they're exhausted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Commissioner Hardesty. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Shannon, would you repeat that last sentence that you just said?
Well, goodness, I don't know if I know the last sentence I just said. So we have $4.5 million in home funds. And what we will be doing is asking our affordable housing owners to apply for rent assistance on a building-wide basis. And we will prioritize those funds for the buildings that have the highest percentage of BIPOC community members. We know this data by heads of household. So we will go building by building to pay and get folks current on their rent, prioritizing first the developments that have the highest percentage of BIPOC community members, and go until those funds are exhausted.
And okay, I think I got that. Thank you.
So we're trying to catch folks up on their rent on a whole building wide basis for our affordable housing portfolio.
Okay. And actually, the last question I was going to ask, just because it popped up in the chat before I was done, and it was about how we're going to be able to engage with folks who don't have documentation. What's the plan for actually reaching out? How will they know these funds are available for them? And what is our plan for assisting community members without documentation?
Commissioner, we do not believe, and I don't want to say this precisely because there still could be something that comes out of federal treasury, but we do believe that the rent support and Cares Act funding does not distinguish based on documented status. So this may be one of the resources that we can use for those folks who have not had that resource in the past. There's still some things to be determined, but that is our hope and our planning right now. And we will be reaching out through the community-based networks that we've worked with and those we haven't in the past to make sure that people are aware of this resource allocation. And we may also try to prioritize additional funds specifically for the undocumented community, knowing that this may be one of the only funds that's available.
Colleagues, I don't want to stop this conversation, and I want us to get back to the Q&A, but I'm being pinged here. Chair Kafoury cannot stay with us for much longer, and I want to get to Chair Kafoury before she has to sign off. So if we could just take a break in the Q&A for a moment and get to Chair Kafoury, that's probably the thing to do. Sorry. Is she on mute? And do we have Chair Kafoury? Does she have access at this point, Carla?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. You're good to go, Chair.
Great. I'm having technical difficulties this morning, so I appreciate you allowing me to participate via telephone. Good morning. I'm Deborah Kafoury, your Multnomah County Chair. Mayor and Commissioners, I want to thank you for inviting me to join you this morning. Since March, COVID-19 has been a constant presence in our lives, threatening our health, the well-being of our community, people's livelihoods, and their housing. In every conceivable way, the crisis has disrupted our daily routines and made our individual and collective futures uncertain. So for as long as we wait for a vaccine, disruption will be a part of our lives, and we cannot let our guard down. It would be one thing if we were confronted with a single long-term crisis to tackle, but one of the most challenging aspects of COVID-19 is that there is no one crisis. And none of the issues that we're facing remain static. They change, they compound, and new ones arise as time goes by. We continue to learn more about the disease every day. Schools, parents, and students are all trying to figure out how to navigate the upcoming school year. And renters who have lost their jobs are wondering what they're going to do when the eviction moratorium is lifted at the end of September. Over the past 4 months, we have learned that living with a pandemic means having our lives disrupted, not just once, but multiple times in many different ways. So in all of this uncertainty, when people look for guidance and signs of progress, they look to us. And by that, I don't mean us as in Multnomah County or as the city of Portland or the state or even Congress. People are seeking leadership and guidance from government as a whole. Because when you've lost your job and you can't pay your rent, or if you have an underlying condition that makes you more vulnerable to COVID-19, the fact that I am the chair of Multnomah County or that Mayor Wheeler is the mayor of Portland is a distinction without a difference. There's an expectation, and it's a fair expectation, that all levels of government are working alongside each other to address this crisis. So it's up to all of us here to meet that expectation and to ensure that the departments for which we are responsible, or the bureaus as you call them, work together for the benefit of our entire community. Now, we're really fortunate because Multnomah County and the city of Portland didn't have to start from scratch when this crisis hit, because we have always worked together to solve our common issues. The item before you today continues that long-standing partnership. The allocations in this ordinance provide both direct funding and critical resources to support the work of putting our shared priorities and values into action during this crisis. For Multnomah County, this means we can continue our work as the local public health authority, as well as serving as the state's largest safety net. As you know, when this crisis was detected in the U.S., Multnomah County, through the efforts of our public health division, built out an infrastructure to meet the challenge of this global pandemic. Our public health team has worked tirelessly to expand contact tracing and case investigation. They've stood up no-cost community testing sites for people experiencing symptoms, and they provided the public with timely, accurate information to help our community understand this crisis and what is required of all of us to make progress. And they've done it all with a focus on equity, accessibility, and representation. This funding also represents a significant investment in protecting people experiencing homelessness from COVID-19. It is in this kind of a crisis where our neighbors who have been forced to live outside are at an extremely high risk of hospitalization. We shouldn't compromise our shared commitment to provide services and protection for those who need it. In fact, we need to double down. Through the city and county's Joint Office of Homeless Services, we will ensure that the people in our shelters who are most vulnerable to this disease will be able to self-isolate, while at the same time continuing to allow for physical distancing at all of our shelters. So far, 18 people who've reported experiencing homelessness in the last year have tested positive for COVID-19. That's out of over 3,000 confirmed cases in Multnomah County. So we have to continue being diligent in protecting the people we serve, because when you're homeless, you are that much more at risk of the severe consequences associated with this disease. And that is one of the many reasons why we need to make sure that we are doing all we can to prevent more households from falling into homelessness during this crisis. The eviction moratorium, which we spearheaded together with the mayor's office back in March, is now state law, providing vital stability for renters across the state for a few more months. It has bought us time, but the challenge before us now is supporting these households when the moratorium is lifted at the end of September. And even though we know we need to do so much more to protect renters in our community, the funding in this ordinance before you today will begin to address that need. And I know that I can be sure that this city council will join me in continuing to advocate for rent assistance dollars from both the state and the federal government way ahead of November. We all agree that there is a lot more work to do to address this crisis, but I want you to know that you have Multnomah County's support, just as I know that we have yours. Today is another big step forward. Yes, it continues the long-standing city and county partnership, but it also represents a fundamental truth that we will either succeed in this together or we will fail together. None of us can do it alone. But as Multnomah County Chair, as well as a proud Portland resident, I am confident that our community can weather this storm so long as we keep looking out for each other. We need each other now more than ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Kafori. We appreciate it. Thank you again for the strong partnership and the close collaboration during the entirety of this COVID crisis. We really appreciate the advice and the counsel that we've been receiving through the health professionals and the folks in the public health department of Multnomah County. That's been critically important to our efforts here. And we're very grateful for the longstanding partnership we have around addressing vulnerable populations, including those who are homeless on our streets. And I want to thank you personally for your leadership. I see Commissioner Hardesty has a question or a comment. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have a quick question for Chair Kafori, and I want to also add my thanks to you, Chair, and your entire board for being really strong partners, as the Mayor said from the very beginning. My question is about the joint office and whether or not this $19 million will add any additional beds for folks who are houseless.
It is my understanding that this $19 million is to protect the folks who are currently in our shelter system who are very, very vulnerable to contracting the disease and then being hospitalized. So by putting them in their own individual spaces, we will keep them safe is the goal. I share a concern that I think where you're going with this, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but is that we do need additional shelter space for people who are still living on the streets. That is a high priority of mine, always has been and will continue to be. I'm not seeing these dollars as the last money in. I think this is a first step from the federal government, and I know that our delegation is working extremely hard to get more federal dollars. I don't think there's a county, a city, or a state in the country that feels that they have the appropriate level of resources from the federal government to deal with this crisis before us.
Thank you, Chair Kafori. So let me just put on the record my concern that we continue to spend all of our resources on people who actually already have some temporary shelter and almost none on people who are not. We have to figure out a way to do both, which means maybe we have less for folks who already have temporary shelter and provide some for folks who have not been sheltered during this entire pandemic. We just can't keep ignoring the suffering that's happening on our street and say that we're hopeful that somebody else will send us some money. I'm just very concerned that we seem to have blinders on. I mean, earlier, our whole communications was about folks who are on the street with nowhere to go. I just think that we should be able to do both. And maybe we can't put everybody currently into a single hotel room, but we have to be able to address this crisis that is growing daily on our street. And I'm very concerned that these limited resources are not going to do anything to make life better for folks who today have nowhere to go. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And we also, Commissioner, we have Mark Jolin here later who can probably also shed some light on at a more granular level. Thank you, Chair Kafori. We really appreciate your being here and your support today.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. I think that you and I are in complete agreement that we need to do more for people in the streets. I want to be clear that we have very carefully targeted the people that we're going to put into these isolation motels that are people that are at the very highest risk. It's not everyone. It's people who are at the highest risk. And the longer that they're staying in these shelters, the more vulnerable not just they are, but the workers who are there as well. So I agree. It seems like, the optics of this may be troubling, but I want you to know that there is no way that we are going to stop here. This is not just a one shot and we're done. The Joint Office and my team, and I know all of you at the city, are very committed to ensuring that that the people who are currently sleeping on the streets are as safe as those who are sleeping in our shelters.
I know that you care as passionately as I do, Chair Kafori, and my comments in no way implies otherwise. But I just can't imagine us spending $19 million and not owning anything at the end of the day. Because we will have a lot more houseless people when this is over. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And did we want to go back to Q&A before we get to public testimony?
I'm done.
Commissioner Hardesty's done, Commissioner Daly, and Commissioner Fritz, are you able to, if you have a question, you can reach us, Commissioner Fritz?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the conversation. I would just note that we know that the most cost-effective way of reducing houselessness is to prevent people from becoming houseless in the first place. And so we need to make sure that the people who are currently hanging on to their housing by a thread remain in that housing. And I agree with Commissioner Hardesty, of course. We all do. We've been working on addressing houselessness for 12 years and more. And in this crisis, I believe that keeping people in who are currently housed should be a top priority.
All right, very good. With that, we will move to public testimony. Carla will call your name when it's your turn, and your microphone will be unmuted. When she does, please share your name for the record. You have 2 minutes to testify. Go ahead, Carla.
Hey, Mayor, I show 34 people signed up. We have about 32 on the line.
Okay.
And the first person is Subhashini Ganesan.
Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. You're good to go.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners of the City Council. My name is Subhashini Ganesan. I'm a South Asian freelance artist, founder and ED of a nonprofit intimate performing arts venue called New Expressive Works, and as you all know, the current Creative Laureate of Portland. Today, I urge you to accept and appropriate the 2020 Cares Act funds, which includes an allotment of $4.35 million to arts and culture in our city. I understand that the $4.35 million allocated for arts and culture are designated to be distributed to BIPOC freelance artists and creatives, to Portland 5, and independent venues, both for-profit and nonprofit in phase 3. This allocation will be another critical step to help us mitigate the dire economic conditions of the arts and culture industry. With very little projections of economic improvement, either near-term or long-term in sight for our industry, this allocation gives a clear signal that our city supports arts and culture as a true priority. BIPOC artists in our city have always been, but in particular now during COVID and the social justice revolution work, are disproportionately stymied by the stresses of health, safety, and the difficulties of our political, economic, and real estate situation. BIPOC artists are musicians, dancers, theater artists, visual artists, filmmakers, teaching artists, and the list goes on. BIPOC artists are predominantly contracted for hourly work that is not consistent year-round. Our self-producing artists are self-producing artistic events and sell their own tickets and might be presented by arts venues based on competitive selection, and so they only receive a one-time payment. Therefore, providing immediate financial resources to artists and creatives who are predominantly Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, and POC folks is both critical and correct. In terms of arts and culture venues, I will stay with my authentic and lived experience as a POC performance venue founder and ED. Affordable spaces began to be scarce in Portland at the end of 2013, and several arts venues, including New, responded by building affordable performance venue rental schedules for dance, music, and theater artists to showcase their work.
That's 2 minutes.
In conclusion, I honestly believe that many of us are working independently to find sustainability, but your coalition and resources, especially from the city, is most appreciated. Thank you for your serious consideration.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you for your service as our Creative Laureate. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next is S. Renee Mitchell.
Good morning, Renee.
I'm unmuting myself. I'm Renee Mitchell. I'm speaking as a 2019 Spirit of Portland Award winner. I'm in support, of course, of the arts and culture allocation. What I would like to just raise awareness of is in the conversation about the impact on people during the COVID pandemic, that the youth voice is really being not heard in this conversation. And I'd like to just raise awareness of the fact that in the period of adolescence, peer relationships are one of the most important features of adolescence. Decades of research documents this, that their opinions, their behaviors, their perceptions, their self-worth is all dependent on what happens during their adolescent period. And so as one of the arts organizations, I Am More, which stands for making ourselves resilient every day, that we pay attention to when we are doing arts, that it really is about self-discovery and not just giving you something to do, but giving them someone to become. So I would like to just raise that awareness as we're looking for how to support our young people during this pandemic and giving them an opportunity to become something to move past their trauma. I'm particularly concerned as school is about to start again, that research shows that neurobiologically our youth are affected by trauma, and it makes it much more difficult to learn. And so as we're considering how do we respond to this using arts as a mechanism, but one for self-discovery, connection, and empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. We appreciate it.
Next is Loretta Boskovic.
Hi, Loretta.
Hi there. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you for hearing my testimony regarding item 563 to allocate $3.5 million from the Cares Act to address the digital divide that predominantly affects Portland's frontline communities, including people with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities. My name is Loretta Boskovic. I have the pleasure of being the development coordinator for the ARC of Multnomah Clackamas, which has been supporting Portlanders experiencing IDD since 1954. The ARC is a small organization with a staff of 8, nearly half of whom have adult children who experience IDD, and our board is made up of another 8 folks who have worked or work in the disability community, including a self-advocate. We offer community inclusion support, holistic health and wellness programming, a very active recreation club, and an information and referral line for around 350 to 400 people every year. In 2018, people with disabilities made up 12.8% of Multnomah County residents, and they are the largest minority group living in Oregon, and their disability identity often intersects with other sources of social disadvantage. And unsurprisingly, Multnomah County is Oregon's county with the highest number of people with disabilities. When the COVID-19 pandemic necessitated the stay-home order, we stopped all of our in-person services, conducted a survey in April, and found that 73.5% of our clients felt more isolated in the week since the order was given, and that 85.7% were connecting with fewer people in their daily life. Over a quarter of the people we surveyed indicated that they did not have internet access, and 38% didn't even have a computer. 47% didn't know how to connect with others online or were nervous in how to do so. So with their well-being in mind, we adapted several key programs to a virtual format and then launched a pilot program this month to get assistive technology in the form of iPads into the hands of 10 people experiencing IDD. We anticipate that it'll probably take up to 5 hours of one-on-one training per person to get them comfortable, and we're also providing them with a year of Wi-Fi access, because it's clear that until a coronavirus vaccine is available, many people with IDD will continue to shelter in place. During this pandemic, many Portlanders are facing very real threats to their basic needs for housing, employment,
That's 2 minutes,
and food security. Thank you. I would like to just say that 1 in 4 Oregonians who experience disability live in poverty at more than twice the rate of their non-disabled peers, have a historically low employment rate, and survive on disability-related services. So for them, losing their ability or not having the ability to connect with others is a very real threat to their mental health and overall well-being.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next is Madison Cairo.
Good morning, Madison.
Good morning. Madison Cairo. I am the Executive Director of the Regional Arts and Culture Council, and I am testifying in support of the arts and culture allocation of item 563, which will support artists and creatives. You know, the decisions you are faced with these days are hard and heavy, and they will impact thousands. They will change lives today and for generations to come. The decisions you have to make with limited resources create an environment where we all feel the pressure of having to choose one cause over another. I know this is not easy. And yet in this time of great suffering, is this not also a time for great change, for transformational reframing of the old ways of seeing things? As we are shaken awake by multiple intersectional global pandemics, we need to suspend fake claims of certainty that this is more essential than that. And as James Baldwin said, lay bare the questions that are hidden by the answers. In order to listen to both research and intuition, we must first see the people hidden behind the numbers on the page and shift from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance. If we can just put down that either-or argument and look instead at the words and stories our artists and creators, our second responders, are sharing with us right now, we will see a community suffering. They're out of work, out of money, out of patience, and yet they continue to show up for us and for each other. If you look around, you will see a community leading the charge for change, healing, and belonging. They need us and we need them. Support for the arts now is supports for people. The arts are people. They are part of our community, and right now they are out of work and their workplaces are closed. There is no lifeline for them. Look around City Hall and across Portland right now, and you will see that artists are already acting as stewards of our public spaces, keeping us attuned to the collective memories and lessons that we need to hear. Now is the time to engage them in the artistic process as never before in helping to envision and shape the Portland we want to become. We can't afford to abandon the people and infrastructure that is critical to making Portland, well, Portland. And we cannot afford to miss any opportunity to support the work of our BIPOC artists and creatives. Enlist artists now to help de-escalate and transform conflict. Engage artists as key strategists to help us reimagine the reopening of our schools, businesses, and communities. Embed artists in our healthcare, social service, and public safety systems to help raise the measure of deep listening, empathy, and responsiveness. Invite artists, thank you. Invite artists into government agencies to shake up linear approaches to policy and encourage artists to join us in the search for solutions to our social justice, housing, food, health, environmental, transportation, education, and economic crisis. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Madison, and thanks for your hard work. We appreciate it.
Next is Hoon Nam.
Welcome.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great, thank you. So first of all, I just want to say, I think it's really important that we look at having appropriate public oversight over this. I'm really glad that Commissioner Hardesty brought up the fact that the way that we normally do business, especially led by the PDC, now Prosper Portland, has led to the situation that we have in Portland today that is extremely unequal. So just trying to go back to the way things were is not the solution here. I think we have to be really careful. And I'm really surprised that even our commissioners are not aware of some of the details about how this is happening. And I just do not trust our unelected bureaucrats to manage these millions of dollars. And I think I just want to underscore that, you know, we not only need to make sure that we take care of immigrants that are excluded from federal and state benefits, but also carefully look at a need for a rental services office. As people have been talking about, we have basically a massive eviction crisis that's looming because the temporary moratorium does not do anything about the accumulated rents that people are going to be owing. And we need to defend people, and creating an office like that could make a huge difference. On top of that, I just want to say that, you know, it's really important that we take care of people in the streets, make sure that we have enough testing, PPE, and hygiene. And as we heard from earlier, right, we can't criminalize these people. We need to make sure that their needs are taken care of so that these neighbors are not coming into City Hall and demanding that we police them and incarcerate them. And I also want to just be careful about, you know, Airbnb wants bailouts for their property owners. We need to make sure that think carefully about who benefits from these funds, and knowing that it's not enough, but we need to make sure that the people in most need that are most excluded are taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Ashley Henry.
Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm sorry I was not able to get through on the Zoom. I'm having some technical difficulties, so thank you for allowing me to call in. I represent an organization called Business for a Better Portland. We're a 3.5-year-old organization comprised of over 400 businesses and organizations, primarily small to medium-sized companies. And when we were formed, our goal was really to leverage the political and social capital of those businesses to support the community more broadly in our work on housing and homelessness, transportation policy, and economic development. And we, of course, never could have foreseen the situation that we find ourselves in today, where we're actually supporting our members directly by advocating for their needs, primarily at the state and federal level. I just want to say how much we appreciate the leadership of Prosper Portland and the mayor and Commissioner Hardesty in all of the economic recovery calls that we've participated in. It's been really heartening to participate in those and to see the genuine commitment to equity and the approach that was taken from the very, very beginning of that economic recovery task force. And so for that, because of that strong equity focus, we chose to dedicate the majority of our efforts to work at the state level, because we did not see that happening, especially the lack of attention to small business. So I just want to call out the strong leadership that you have all shown. And of course, as Commissioner Udaley mentioned, none of these dollars will be enough, but we're very supportive of the $15 million that is in this package today for small business. It will unfortunately not be enough to save everyone, but I'm very appreciative that the process resulted in funding for some small business support, and the grant program that Prosper established earlier was, a step in the right direction, and I'm really encouraged that there is a desire to help these companies, these small companies that employ so many people in our city, and have a ripple effect throughout the economy for families and individuals. So I'll stop there and just say thank you for prioritizing that $15 million and the additional $2 million for venues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. We appreciate all of the time and the energy and the input you've provided to the Economic Impact Task Force. We've really appreciated the partnership with you and Business for a Better Portland.
Next is Robin Williams.
Greetings.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Robin Williams. I'm the Executive Director for Portland 5 Centers for the Arts. We are the umbrella organization that operates the 3 buildings and 5 theaters that are owned by the City of Portland. We book them, we maintain them, and we host over 1,000 events a year. We have had no events since March 13th. With no revenues, that affects 85% of the monies that we need to take care of the buildings. We also are losing about 10% of our revenues in lodging tax. We anticipate exhausting all of our funding by October 1st. So far, we've laid off 90% of our staff, and we're maintaining only the minimum to take care of the buildings and continue booking so that we have events that we will be able to come back to quickly when the time is right. We've made many significant investments in our city and the communities over the years. For example, in the past 4 years, we've provided $16.5 million in capital maintenance for the venues. 11 of it came directly from Portland 5, and then we leveraged $5.5 million from other sources. We also invest in the arts education by the most fragile students in our community. Our education program focuses on Title I schools only. We provide free tickets and transportations to shows. We also provide transportation and ticketing to families from low-income communities. We've invested in our BIPOC communities by giving first priority for all of our jobs through Merck's First Opportunity Target Area. We provide more than 800 jobs per year, and that does not include all the ancillary jobs as a result of our events, like bartenders and security folks. We can be a key component in helping Portland recover after the pandemic. It's going to need us to be available and for our venues to be functional so that we can continue to be the economic catalyst that our people and businesses rely on us for.
That's 2 minutes.
The money allocated
We may have
for
lost
P5.
Robin, I'm sorry, you cut out on us.
Oh, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Now we can. Did you have, your 2 minutes is up, but did you have one final thought you wanted to get in because you cut out there at the end?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Robin. We appreciate your hard work.
Next is Samantha Vandemerva.
Hi there. I'm Samantha Vandemerva, founding artistic director of Shaking the Tree Theatre in Southeast Portland, and I'm in huge support of the suggested allocation of relief funds for arts and culture. Shaking the Tree is a small independent venue and nonprofits arts organization. We not only produce our own plays, but we rent our space to a large variety of performance groups. We also teach theater classes and hold workshops at our venue. This means that we create a lot of opportunities and revenue for Portland artists, as well as provide community enrichment through storytelling. Our venue also enriches the ecology of our neighborhood. We support local restaurants because our patrons will go out to eat before a show or go to a bar afterwards, or parents will sit at a coffee shop while their kids are in class, or actors and designers will run out to get lunch during a rehearsal break. While we are shuttered, we are greatly missed by our community and our neighborhood. Shaking the Tree's story is just one example of the huge loss Portland will face if our independent venues and arts organizations are unable to stay afloat. Portland will be nothing without its unique arts and culture scene. Our independent venues and arts organizations are responsible for creating thousands of jobs, and being closed for this long has affected thousands of livelihoods. We will not be able to survive without significant relief, and the ripple effect of our closure will be felt for years to come. Please deeply consider the loss that will be felt if we were to disappear completely, and let it compel you to commit to our sustainability over the long term. When we are finally able to open our doors, our communities will be hungry for live arts experiences. Help us make sure that we are well positioned to be of service when that day comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha.
Next is Andrew Miller.
Welcome. Andrew, we can't hear you. Are you muted?
Is that better?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll start over. Good morning. For the record, my name is Andy Miller. I'm the Executive Director at Human Solutions, your partner in East Portland and East Multnomah County. First, I want to start by thanking the Council for recognizing the need and the urgency we're seeing every day at Human Solutions. Infection and unemployment rates remain very high in East County and East Portland, and we know that our region is home to many Black and brown families for whom unemployment payments and stimulus checks, if they come at all, will not be big enough to meet expenses like food, rent, car payments, and medical bills. Second, I want to support the proposed allocation to close the digital divide. The pandemic has increased our community's reliance on technology to accomplish the tasks of basic living, especially for kids who can only attend camps this summer and school next fall if they can log on and log in. But most importantly, I want to talk to you this morning about the rent. While we support the proposed allocation today for rental assistance, we can all agree it's far from enough to prevent the disaster of homelessness for too many families, especially many Black and brown families. We need a more systemic intervention than rental assistance. We know we lack the funding to cover the ongoing need in the community arising from the pandemic. And we see it as we are trying to cover a king-sized bed of need with twin-sized sheets and blankets. It simply won't work. We need to shift strategies to one that lands the burden of insufficient funding where it can best be borne, with the owners of property and with the banks who underwrite them. We ask the council to press the legislature to simply cancel the rent. By canceling the rent, we mean a real systemic change scaled for this crisis that will prevent all renters impacted by COVID-19 from being evicted for non-payment of rent for the duration of the pandemic. This approach would shift the dollars you are allocating today from tenant-based rental assistance administered across a broad set of agencies to a singular landlord mitigation fund, much more efficient and simpler to administer. We need to put this approach in place now before we start spending down the limited funds we have by paying individual rents one at a time, knowing that we will run out of funds. I know that this change will take legislative action. What I'm asking today is that council add its voice to the many voices to press the legislature for this kind of systemic intervention.
Thank you, Andy.
Next is Kim Elliott.
Good morning, Kim.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes. My name is Kim Elliott. I'm co-director of the Assistive Technology Lab at Community Vision. Community Vision is speaking this morning in favor of the digital divide allocation of $3.5 million. We are a local nonprofit that has been supporting people with disabilities live in their own homes in the Portland area for the past 31 years. Our programs focus on in-home supports, housing access, and assistive technology solutions and training. Only 5 years ago, we might have looked at technology and internet access as lifestyle choices or enhancements. Times have changed. Digital connection is no longer a luxury, but essential to living in our current society. In fact, our digital reliance has sharply come into focus during this pandemic. Can you imagine what it would be like sheltering in place, as you all have been, without internet access? Many of us are able to work, socialize, get crucial news and information, purchase food and supplies, and see our healthcare providers, all through access to technology and the internet. The inequity of the current digital divide is felt acutely in the disability community, where many people with disabilities live on a mere $780 a month. Digital access has been fundamental to Community Vision's response to this pandemic within the disability community. Many people with disabilities may be medically vulnerable, leading them to stay at home even while the city begins to open up, extending their social isolation for longer than much of the rest of Portland. Additionally, telehealth has become an essential portal to meeting ongoing health needs. In partnership with OHSU, we are creating 4 informational videos on telehealth access for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We have heard from many people with disabilities how important this digital access has been. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim.
Next is Mira McLaughlin.
Hi, Mira.
Hello there. I'm Mara McLaughlin. I'm Executive Director of Music Portland, which is a 2-year-old trade association for our commercial music industry here. I'm testifying today specifically to support the allocation of venues from a popular music perspective. So thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Fritz, and especially Commissioner Udaley for supporting this plan to sustain the cultural heartbeat of our community. Venues are like the factories of our local music ecology. In addition to all the people they employ directly, they are workspaces for musicians and production crews. According to CD Baby, at least 20,000 local musicians are making some or all of their living from professional music. And at the end of March, Music Portland confirmed that 1,500 musicians in Oregon, primarily Portland, had already lost a total of $8 million of canceled show income just through June. So pay for venue performance is a primary income source for the whole industry. 700 local music businesses employing thousands rely on musicians paid for performance as customers. The state aid granted this week by the E-Board is like a tourniquet for venues, the bare minimum to keep them from closing permanently right away. This city allocation will be needed to navigate the complex and uncharted path back to stable venue operations. The proposed venue allocation is much needed, but the implementation of this aid offers even new opportunities. Music Portland encourages the creation of an Oregon Community Foundation Venue Stabilization Fund through which venue grants could be distributed and where the CRF allocation could act as seed money to incent the private sector to invest. Loss of venues will mean loss of business advantage from PDX Music that's already been confirmed by the Portland Business Alliance and many employers. This investment by the city can also be a tool for social justice in our music economy. Venue grants provided via this fund should and will have DEI accountability baked in. This CRF allocation must go by law to existing venues impacted by COVID, which are all owned by white. But Music Portland advocates that the first $250,000 to $500,000 of private sector donations spurred by it will be committed to the creation of a Black-owned and managed venue for music, arts, and community.
That's 2 minutes.
Thank you for your commitment to arts, culture, film, and music in Portland.
Thanks, Mira.
Next is Damon Smith.
Welcome, Damon.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. I'd like to thank you guys for your time today. I'm speaking on the funding for artists and culture allocation. I'm a local artist. Just giving you my testimony on why I believe funding is so important. As COVID hit, I was laid off of my day job for a period of time, and art is the thing that really carries through and helps us as artists to be able to provide for our families. I have a 3-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, and having funding for the arts couldn't be more important than it is today. I've recently been going downtown to help provide murals for the businesses that have been affected by some of the protesting and that have boarded up their windows. And during my time down there painting, I did about 4 or 5 murals out of over 33 that are down there by numerous different artists. I noticed one common trend from the people in Portland who would watch and encounter me painting, and they all wanted to see more of it. All of it was positive, and the feedback was refreshing. People in the city and around the area are in desperate need for something to look forward to and to give them hope and to help them get through their day with all this bad news that keeps coming up on the news. Art is one of those things that grants us a chance to step back from all of that and kind of, get a fresh perspective and really helps us move forward as a community. So I asked for help funding this because it doesn't only help me as an artist, it also helps our community to be a brighter place, to be a better place, to give people the inspiration to move forward with their lives and continue to push forward in all different areas of work. And I just think that supporting artists now is the best thing that we can do.
That's 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your guys' time, and I hope you guys can consider helping fund the arts. I know that myself as an artist will be deeply impacted just as much as anyone else. So thank you.
Yeah, excellent testimony. Thank you, Damon. And you're 100% right about the public needing something positive and inspirational. And the window art we're seeing around the city is truly phenomenal. And just on a side note, I'm glad that there are concerted efforts to make sure that it's protected and saved as opposed to lost after those boards come down. So I appreciate your perspective today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Next is Adam Gonsalves.
Morning, Adam.
Good
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for taking this testimony. I'm also testifying in my support of the arts and culture part of the proposed allocation. I'm the head mastering engineer at Telegraph Mastering, which is an audio engineering studio here in Portland. And I was one of the founders of Cascade Record Pressing, which is a vinyl record manufacturing pressing plant. Without music venues, an enormous part of the client base of myself and other arts professionals and music-related medium manufacturers will disappear. There's approximately 200 other local music production professionals that can't survive in a town where musicians have no place to perform and earn money from their performances. So in addition to all of the absolutely crucial cultural benefits that arts provide and make up an enormous part of the identity of the city and what makes Portland not only a nice place to live, but a desirable place for businesses to move to and for art to be made in. The economic impact of the music venues not receiving these funds and disappearing can't be overstated. If they disappear and artists no longer have a way to make money from their art, then over 200 other small businesses disappear soon afterwards. So the devastation that would be experienced by music production professionals vanishing would be 200 small businesses that employ lots of people just falling away overnight. So the point of this testimony was just to not only lend my support to the cultural argument for making sure that the arts and cultural appropriation goes through and supporting art and culture in Portland, but to punctuate the economic impact that would be felt if music venues aren't supported with those funds and aren't reopening when everything else does. I see the rest of my time.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
Next is Connie Wong.
Morning, Connie.
Good morning. My name is Connie Wong, and I am going to use my time and opportunity and privilege to speak for those that don't have access to these kind of meetings and opportunities. As I've heard a lot of my community members here speak on the importance of arts and buildings and structures, and I don't entirely disagree. I think that there is a baseline of need and support that needs to be provided to people in our community that aren't able to speak up for their various organizations or themselves in these situations. As we've seen from COVID, anything that could have broken this situation is breaking. And there are so many facets of support that are needed, from people that do need support with the digital divide, schools, healthcare, all of these things. But as we take the money and we appropriate it to our community that the federal government has allotted, it is very, very important that we go back to the baseline of humanity and look at the people that don't even have access to the opportunity like this to speak for themselves. In the act and then the things that the task force have laid out, they do plan to support the unhoused. That's obviously one facet that, on this kind of call, we're not going to see people that are unhoused speaking up. They're not in a position to speak for themselves. One thing that was brought up, and specifically by Commissioner Hardesty, was the undocumented. Undocumented people deserve access to these funds and these support systems, and they aren't in a position to advocate for themselves or speak for those needs. And then one area that has not at all been addressed is the unbanked. There are many people that, may have jobs, may have homes, may have things, but don't have official banking systems. And those are systems that are created to create this class system. And if people don't have banking systems, they still deserve access to—
That's 2 minutes.
To these funds and to these needs. So I just implore those that are involved in the task force and the commissioners to hold the accountability to humanity and everyone that needs these, while buildings and music programs and all of these things are absolutely important. The people that can't speak for themselves also need that voice and are just as important.
Thank you, Connie. Appreciate your testimony.
Next is Brian Weaver.
Brian. Oh, Commissioner Hardesty had her hand up. I apologize. Commissioner Hardesty.
That's okay, Mayor. I was just going to thank Connie for her testimony and tell her how grateful I was to hear someone speak on behalf of people who don't have access to this meeting. So thank you very much, Connie, for being here today, and I greatly appreciate what you had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Weaver.
Good morning, commissioners. Am I on?
Yeah, you are. You're good to go.
My name is Brian Weaver. I'm the Artistic Director of Portland Playhouse, and I'm testifying in support of Agenda Item 563 and funding that supports BIPOC individual artists, art organizations, and venues. I want to thank the council and everyone working on this funding proposal that you included identified funds in the amount of $250,000 for Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists in the proposal. I'd like to add that I think it's important to state in the public document that this funding is allocated to BIPOC artists in recognition of past harm done by the city and state, that it is not a handout or a grant, but rather a reparation and money that is owed. In doing so, with a small amount of funding, we will be furthering the groundwork for a larger movement and call for national reparations. The funding allocated to support nonprofit venues is vitally important. Portland Playhouse is a small professional theater company in the King neighborhood. We serve an audience of 10,000 people a year and work in 10 to 12 middle and high schools providing intercurricular and extracurricular drama programming. Playhouse is one of the special little gems amidst thousands of others that make Portland a special city, unique and hard to replicate. A neighborhood theater that folks can walk to, gold certified by the city's sustainability program, and awarded by the American Theater Wing as one of the most successful theater startups in the country. We are also an endangered species. Many artists live close to the poverty line without savings and without a safety net. It is rare for a startup theater company to find the financial stability that Portland Playhouse has established, and it is the result of tens of thousands of volunteer hours, extraordinary vision and support from the King Neighborhood Association, passionate artists, and an even more passionate ground roots community organizing effort that spanned 10 years, and coronavirus could kill it. Without emergency funding, Portland Playhouse and most other art organizations will close. And while art will never die, and art making and art makers will always find a way to survive, the delicate, beautiful, complex, diverse, joyful ecology of creative expression in Portland will be hard to replicate once it is closed. In closing, I'll just say thank you. In closing, let me say that public money for art is essential because it is democratizing and it will hold us accountable. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony.
Andrea Valderrama.
Welcome. Andrea, are you unmuted?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now we can. It's good to hear you.
Thank you. Mayor, commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning. My name is Andrea Valderrama, and I serve as Advocacy Director for the Coalition of Communities of Color, CCC. I am a registered lobbyist with the City of Portland, speaking on behalf of CCC. The CCC supports a collective racial justice effort to improve outcomes for communities of color through policy analysis and advocacy, environmental justice, culturally appropriate data and research, and leadership development in communities of color. We are an alliance of culturally specific community-based organizations with representation from various communities of color. Existing racial disparities, socioeconomic factors, and inequities in health outcomes and in healthcare access means that our response to preventing and mitigating COVID-19 must prioritize communities who need it the most: Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We appreciate your commitment to addressing systemic inequities for our communities and for allocating these critical resources to our families. I'd specifically like to offer appreciations for, one, bridging the digital divide. Addressing this inequity is central to getting BIPOC communities out of these public health and economic crises. Device and internet access are not luxuries, but necessities, especially for frontline communities and in the organizations that serve them. Without a device and reliable internet access, it is challenging to access housing assistance. It is challenging to look up emergency food programs. It is challenging to find necessary health services. and it is almost impossible to complete educational assignments for our classes. These resources are essential. 2, business and nonprofit support. 3, Multnomah County public health and COVID-19 response. And 4, housing and household stability and the Joint Office of Homeless Services. We also have 2 additional asks: that you coordinate and track hate crimes. Immediately after the virus began, increased incidences of hate and violence began in the AAPI community and in communities of color in Portland neighborhoods where it has been repeatedly published that there are areas of high contraction rates. We ask that you allocate additional resources to address these additional traumas our communities are facing, on top of these public health and economic crises. And 2, collect and report data that is disaggregated by race and ethnicity. Without the data, culturally specific public health and economic solutions cannot be made. We urge you to direct your bureaus to collect and report disaggregated data by race and ethnicity wherever possible. When we have accurate data and respond appropriately, we are all healthier. We appreciate your commitment to our communities, and I look forward to working with you all in all of these efforts. Thank you for your leadership and for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it very much.
Next is Lee Miller.
Hi, Lee.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. My name is Lee Miller. I'm with Flip the Script through Central City Concern. I would like to comment on item 563. Flip the Script is a program for Black African American people who are re-entering the community after incarceration. I have been recently released after doing 20 years, and technology has changed so much in that time. I would like those that need to know that the Chrome tablet that was donated to me will be a great help for me in so many ways, as I am new to working with things via the internet, and I'm learning how to do things with the computers now instead of always asking for someone to do it for me. Yes, this is a learning experience, and it is also gives me my independence instead of relying on someone else to do it for me. As for now, I am low income, disabled. I receive SNAP benefits, and I do not have a job at this time. I applied for disability in hopes to have some type of income with a part-time job. There are lots of individuals that I know of that could use something like this to help better themselves and their future. Please vote yes on item 563. Thank you for hearing my comment today.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you for sharing your story. We appreciate it. Commissioner Hardesty has her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lee, for your testimony. It is rare for us here at the City Council to hear firsthand someone's lived experience who has been part of our justice system. I've been talking to a lot of folks who keep telling me that there is almost nothing for folks who have served their time and come back into their local community. Can you talk a little bit more about your transition back into the city? And I'm respectful that there are a lot of people here, so Mayor, I'm not gonna ask too many questions, but we rarely get this opportunity to ask these questions directly.
Yes, I can answer some more.
Thank you, Lee. And so were you able to get housing?
Flip the Script right now, the group I just spoke about is helping me to get housing, as well as helping me try to find some type of part-time unemployment until my disability is approved.
And it sounds like Flip the Script actually helped you identify where you could get resources to help you survive after you came back, correct?
100%. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now to look for housing or even work on the internet to learn how to fill out applications or forms or anything like that. And I thank them for their donation through CCC, Central City Concern.
Would you be kind enough to reach out to my office? I would love to have a deeper conversation with you because this is a conversation that we refuse to have as the city of Portland, right? Whatever we think of our criminal justice system, 90% of people come back to the community that they left. And we do almost nothing to help people make a smooth transition back into a productive society. So I would like to talk to you offline. Thank you so much for showing up today, and thank you for your courage to talk about your lived experience.
You're quite welcome, and all I would need is some information, or I can give you my phone number and you can get contact with me.
Yes, if you would, I bet caller would be happy to connect with you before you hang up, and we will make sure you know how to reach me. But the easiest way is Joanne, you got a computer, right? You got a computer.
Yeah, but it's not.
And so Joanne at portlandoregon.gov. Again,
Joanne
at portlandoregon.gov. And actually, if you just Google City Council, I'm the only black face there, so I'll be easy to find.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Have a good day.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it.
Next is Grace Henricks.
Hi, Grace. Grace, you're still muted. Carla, is Grace on a phone line?
Looks like we've got her on the phone and on her computer.
All right, Grace, you need to unmute. If it's the phone, it's going to be *6 on your keypad. If it's the computer.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now,
are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Grace Henricks, and I'm with Apano, and I'm here to speak this morning on behalf of the small businesses that I work with, and also to offer my experience in some of the challenges and successes that I've been witnessing in the last 4 months during the pandemic. And I'm sorry, could you just give me a moment here? I'm having technical difficulties. There we go. I'm here today to speak on behalf of small business owners and in favor of the proposed small business funds allocated from the Cares Local Relief Fund. My role is business advisor to support API-owned businesses within the Jade District as well as Greater Portland, with the support and resources from Prosper Portland and the Inclusive Business Network. My work would normally be to support business owners with development and growth, but in these times of the pandemic, my role has turned to resource navigating and crisis control. I've been personally able to touch and work with about 65 business owners. Some of the challenges for our API business owners have been language and access barriers. Hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you. Are you still there? Carla, did we lose her?
I see she's still in the attendee list. Keelan, do you know what happened? Oops, looks like she might be gone now.
Yeah, it looks like she dropped off.
Okay, I don't know why we're having a lot of technical glitches today. Commissioner Hardesty, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I did, Mayor. We did get an email saying that the city is having some technical problems with its computer, so it may be us.
Yeah, who knows? Grumblings in the machine. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, great. Grace, be back. Okay, go ahead.
My apologies. I'm back. Working with the API business owners, some of the challenges have been language and access barriers. So I wanted to speak in favor of the funding allocated for the digital divide, as well as the small business funding Some of the successes through Apano's advocacy and communication with Prosper Portland, we were able to receive and award a grant of $150,000 back in March. And this was acknowledgement of some of the hardship that was beginning early on, documented since January, due to COVID from racism and xenophobia within the J District. This money served an obvious need towards payroll, lease, and utilities, but also provided relationship building and has begun a understanding for the business owners of interdependence within our community and also trust in our local government. As we know, small businesses are the fabric and backbone of our local economy, and the funding that we were granted early days of COVID were significant in assisting our J District business owners in weathering the storm, most of which are still in operation.
That's 2 minutes.
Thank you. Just wanted to note the resilience and determination that I'm honored to see in our business owners, and hopeful for the continuation of funding and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Next is Malichi Graham.
Welcome.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Malachy Graham. I'm a local musician here in Portland, and I am also testifying in support of the grant to arts and culture in our city, and specifically the support for our independent venues. They were the first institutions that closed their doors for this pandemic, and they're going to be among the last to reopen. They drive real revenue for local musicians and performers, and as Adam said before me, they also pass a lot of revenue into the community as a whole. The whole arts ecosystem, music ecosystem specifically, depends on them. They also serve as incubators, really tastemakers, like finding incredible acts and supporting artists that then develop and drive Portland's creative reputation nationally and internationally. Over the last 10 years, it's been harder and harder to make a living as an artist in Portland, and live performance revenue is really at the core of a musician's income. So if our venues close, I think there's a real risk for the creative economy of Portland just sort of withering away. And these venues are gathering spaces, not just for our music community, but for the entire city. I'm also really grateful that funding has been paired with grants for BIPOC artists. They've always driven the music culture and brilliance of this city, and that's a really important part, as a previous caller said, in terms of reparations for those artists. So thank you for everyone who has worked on this thoughtful relief package. I'm really grateful for you all.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
Mm-hmm. Next is Kyle Morton.
And Carla, after this one, can you give me a count, please?
Sure.
Hey, is this thing on?
Yep, you're good.
Hey, my name's Kyle Morton. I'm testifying in favor of Agenda 563, specifically the relief programs for independent venues. First, I want to thank the mayor and the commissioners for letting me be here today and for everything else you do. I'm a musician and I work in a music venue. This is a pretty typical arrangement, venues being one of the few businesses that actually encourage touring, and where playing in a band doesn't look bad on a resume. I've been playing music in Portland and abroad with my band Typhoon for the past 15 years, and when I'm home, I help manage Mississippi Studios. Both lines of work have been completely gutted by the COVID crisis, and for the same reason. To have shows, you have to have crowds. To control a pandemic, you cannot have crowds. As Malachy just said, music venues were the first places to close, and they'll be the last to reopen. The first point I want to make is about economic impact for musicians. Live shows are the only way we earn money from our music. Spotify pays literally pennies, and getting commercial work is like playing the musical lottery. Put simply, to make money, musicians need to play shows, and to play shows, we need venues. The second point I want to make is Portland venues are special. I've spent much of my life in these places, playing on their stages, going to see shows, getting to know the people that work in them, sound engineers to box office attendants, bartenders to publicists, many of them artists like myself who need a day job. Portland venues are special. They're not perfect. We need more BIPOC-owned venues. We need more production managers and talent buyers who frankly don't look like me. I'm requesting that all venue applications for public money should require mandatory equity benchmarks based on actual metrics, like requiring a transparent diversity audit for starters. My last point, and this is just a civic observation, is that we need assembly spaces. When COVID is over, we'll once again need places where people can be together in real life. As great as Zoom is, there's no substitute for the three-dimensional world, and to have civic life, you need assembly spaces. So let's please keep ours. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. And I'm in 100% agreement with you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I show we have 9 more people.
Very good. Thank you.
Next is, I believe, Gia, Naranjo Rivera.
Yes. Hi, good morning. Hi there. This is my first time speaking to you all. My name is Gia Naranjo Rivera, and I'm a PhD in just completing my PhD in public health with a focus on healing trauma, dismantling oppression, and promoting thriving well-being and collaboration. And my dissertation has been in partnership with the Peace in Schools program, which is in 90% of the Portland public high schools. I also own my own small business focused on something called the science of social justice, an emergent field of study pioneered by Dr. Sarah King, a Black female researcher and neuroscientist at OHSU that focuses on the study and action of socially just programming and ways of being that asserts that you cannot have social justice without health and vice versa. I really love what everyone before me has said, and I may echo some of that, but I'm here today in part speaking for many who are voiceless and are not able to connect to this webinar regarding adopting a trauma-informed funding approach to help heal the community. Since May 29th, I've been involved in peacefully protesting against police brutality, and I've witnessed and documented numerous civil and human rights violations at the hands of police and other allied uniformed personnel, as well as neo-Nazi Proud Boys working in collusion to harm human beings, including many of our most vulnerable who are living in the area outside of the Injustice Center at Multnomah County and Federal Court Building. They've been using, they have demonstrated, and I have witnessed and experienced personally, unmerited use of chemical weapons, which violate the Geneva Protocol and Article 1.5 of the Chemical Weapons Convention for the prohibition of chemical weapons. And this happened as recently as last night to me and others. Excessive use of force, including assault, shooting chemical agents, rubber bullets, and more. Targeting media, youth, and strong Black leaders, including aiming at people's heads with weapons and deploying explosive devices in the faces of positive, strong, peaceful Black leaders. Violating constitutional rights. I was personally arrested for praying, a violation of my right to free speech, assembly, religion, and voicing grievances against the government. Targeting and harassment, illegal arrests, illegal searches, and allowing neo-Nazi attacks to occur with impunity. So I certainly stand with many of my friends in asking for the reallocation of funds. So I've put together an acronym of some of my requests around and the community's requests that have been a synthesis as I am a researcher.
2 minutes.
Okay, as a researcher, I've been talking to many, and the reallocation of funds, I believe, should not only include defunding the Portland PD by at least 50%.
Excuse me, Mayor. Thank you, Gia, for testifying this morning. I'm going to ask you what may seem as an odd question. Have you filed a complaint with our Independent Police Review, IPR? Yeah, you're muted. Are you able to unmute, Gia?
Oh, I apologize. Yes, I have reported these atrocities to many folks, and including the IPR, and that has been, the response has been tepid, has been evasive, and as I look at the needs for reinvestment, I see that addressing these abominable acts are linked to the need for protecting our most vulnerable with housing, food, healthcare, improved education.
Thank you, Gia.
Arts, culture, music, and more.
Excuse me, Gia. Would you be kind enough to contact my office at joanne@portlandoregon.gov?
I would, and I thank you so much for your time. You all have a blessed day.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next is Alan Hippolito.
Good morning, Alan.
Hi, folks. Yeah, no, I'll yield my time. I was asked to sign up just in case I wasn't able to participate and answer questions. So I'll yield my time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate your work.
We'll go with Miranda Michan.
Hi, Miranda.
Morning. Can y'all hear me?
Morning. You're good to go, Miranda.
All right. Thanks for the time today. My name is Miranda Mission. I am the Community Development Policy Coordinator at the Native American Youth and Family Center. As you all know, we're a wraparound agency, and we serve around 2,000 individuals and impact the lives of over 10,000 individuals in the region each year. We offer a wide array of services for youth of all ages, including family services, education, health, housing, economic development, and community support programs. I just wanted to add my voice today to show support for item 563, specifically the allocation of $3.5 million in CARES funding to address the digital divide. At NAYA, we know that the current pandemic is disproportionately impacting the communities that we serve, and we know that since we've had to close our doors to the public, it's more difficult for our digitally isolated community members to access our services. Still, in this time of crisis, our wraparound services are more crucial than ever. Ensuring that our most vulnerable community members can access them is an urgent priority for us. Additionally, as the Many Nations Academy at NAYA navigates reopening in the fall, our increased dependence on technology poses a significant challenge. Many of our students lack stable housing, are very low income, and in general do not have the infrastructure to be successful in a remote learning environment. We do not have the resources to ensure that all students are successful while continuing to provide for our community's other critical needs. With the support of the city and the allocation of this $3.5 million to scale up the Technology Kit pilot project, addressing the digital divide becomes possible for NAYA and our peer organizations. So thank you all for your leadership in addressing the digital needs of Portland's most vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. Appreciate it. Commissioner Hardesty, do you have your hand up?
No, Mayor, I don't. It's still left.
No worries. Thank you.
Jenny Stadler.
Hi, Jamie.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
Yep, loud and clear, Jenny. You're good to go.
Great. I'm Jenny Stadler. I'm the Executive Director at Fame Academy. We're an arts and education organization here in Portland, Oregon for adults with developmental disabilities. I am here today to support the funding of arts and arts venues through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funds, and also to ask that City Council continue to ensure that the most vulnerable populations, including people with disabilities, are prioritized in this funding. Our students at FAME, like many people with developmental disabilities, have been deeply impacted by the coronavirus. Not only have they been among the first to lose their employment, but research is starting to show that many individuals with developmental disabilities are more vulnerable to and more likely to die from COVID-19. Even in non-pandemic times, people with disabilities experience social isolation, underemployment, health issues, and a lack of access to opportunities to connect with others in a meaningful way, including the arts. It's critical that we include them now as we think about relief funding and the long-term recovery of our city. In addition, the venues and the organizations that the Arts and Culture Allocation will support are vital to our city's cultural fabric. As you've heard from many of my colleagues, without funding, we can't ensure their survival through what is going to be a long road ahead. Without our treasured venues, both large and small, organizations like FAME won't have places to go back to present and share art when this is over. This is a creative and an economic survival issue. Additionally, as we at FAME and many of our arts partners have demonstrated, there are some ways to connect and create meaningful work right now, work that resonates deeply with what we're all currently experiencing, but we can't do it without funding as soon as possible. You can help us, your community's artists, continue to thrive, both now and when the pandemic loosens its hold. I just want to say thank you for considering the funding, for keeping artists and those of us who experience disabilities at the top of mind. I'm grateful to you for recognizing that without a vocal focus on the most marginalized communities, many recent advancements towards equity may be lost at a time of competing needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next is Jim Brunberg.
Mr. Brunberg, welcome.
Hello. Am I on?
You're on. You're good to go.
Thank you so much for listening. Thanks, Mayor and Commissioners Fritz, Hardesty, and Udaley. And I really appreciate you hearing some of this stuff multiple times. I'm here to support arts and culture component of the CRF budget and the livelihoods that it supports. As a reflection of the city's values and economic recovery, I also want to voice my support for the Friends of Noise proposal that is part of this, or may be considered as part of this in some form, that will be used to help cure the lack of diversity and representation in the Portland ecosystem of venues. Venues are uniquely impacted by the virus and are one of a small group of business sectors hardest hit. This has been a period of heartbreak for musicians, actors, and other performers who can't work, who can't pursue their passions or feed their families. Often these are the people who fall through the cracks and have not been able to participate in programs provided so far. But it's also been a period of reflection. We've seen how we can do it better, and we will do it better. Portland is a performance arts town like Nashville, Memphis, Austin, New York. It's a great place to live and make a living for thousands of musicians and actors. Thousands more work jobs that support these performances. Venues are where people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, share what is basically a modern town square. They share ideas, stories, art. They share perspective. The federal PPP money was a shot in the arm. It helped venues get some employees back and pay their rent for about 8 weeks, but the PPP is gone if it was used as instructed. So now, as of yesterday, we have some help from the state as well for some venues, but not for all venues. Some are falling through the cracks. Venues can't open part way. Social distancing doesn't work in spaces that were designed to bring people together. We've had zero income for 4 months. Our overhead is immense. These are huge spaces. We can't just lay everybody off either. Our administrative staff is busier than ever as we reschedule logistics and undo a year's work while moving it into the next year. Venues fill Portland's streets nightly with the vibrance of ideas and harmony that make this city great. And for every dollar spent on a ticket, $12 go into the local economy. We ask that you approve of the CRF spending proposal in order to help get these businesses and nonprofits through this and come out better and stronger on the other side. Venues are Portland's living room, Portland's town square, where we will heal from this virus. Venues give jobs to individuals, and venues give voice to individuals. I'm speaking on behalf of the Independent Venue Coalition, which is in Portland.
That's 2 minutes.
Thank you. Many handfuls of venues ranging from the Milagro Theater to the Roseland Theater, from the Artichoke to the Wonder. And I thank you so much for your time.
Jim, thank you. And thank you for your consistent advocacy and the information and feedback that you've provided to me, to my team, to the Economic Impact Task Force. It's been critically important to this. And I want to thank you all for listening.
Next is Rosetta Venatucci.
Welcome. Good afternoon.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Rosetta Venatucci. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm here today to talk to you about supporting the entertainment industry workers who all lost their work in March. We will be out of work for over a year. Likely live events will not return for real till May of 21. Without jobs, many of these workers, all of the artists, I echo everything y'all have said, we're losing our health care during a pandemic. When the unemployment runs out, we'll have lost the ability to pay for health care, rent, student loans. It goes on and on. It's going to get worse. People, please for the people, use some of the CARES funding. I'm asking you to protect the city's assets, our nonprofit city-owned theaters known as P5. Thousands of people are without jobs. We're connected to the daily operation of P5 theaters. Thousands of school children depend on our theaters. For many of these diverse students, this is their only access to live events. The theaters fuel our economy by bringing Broadway shows such as Hamilton and Miss Saigon. Many of the workers connected to these theaters receive area standard wages for their skill. They get affordable health care and retirement benefits. One of our workers has a family of 4. His work at P5 allows him to pay his mortgage, food, family health insurance, and more. His wife is able to volunteer at the kids' school. She fosters animals for the Humane Society and other volunteer work because they have a stable home existence. P5 is more than buildings. It's a home for arts organizations that are our community. It is home for us to perform our art. It is home to experience them. Without trained people to operate the theaters will not be in operating order. Without funding, they will not open when the shows are allowed to return. I have a lot of passion for the entertainment industry and for P5. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
Next is Kiana Floyd.
Welcome, Kiana.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah, we sure can.
Wonderful. For the record, my name is Kiana Floyd, owner of Amalfi's Restaurant at 4703 Northeast Fremont Street here in Portland, Oregon. I want to thank you for allowing me to provide testimony regarding the allocation of funds to small business, particularly through the Prosper Portland Small Business Relief Grant. Amalfi's has been a cornerstone of our community for 61 years. I'm third-generation owner and the first woman of color to own Amalfi's. It was previously owned by my stepfather and step-grandfather. Back in April, we were one of the fortunate recipients to receive the Prosper Portland grant. And I'm here to tell you it meant all the difference in the world in keeping our lights on, the doors open, and a small workforce employed. When the governor's executive orders came into effect to close our dine-in portion of our business, we had the unfortunate task to send 90% of our employees to the unemployment lines. We had a tremendous loss of revenue, and yet vendor invoices and taxes were still due. It was a horrible whirlwind and continues to be so. But now, many businesses, particularly in the hospitality industry, are left with a risky gamble of, we're having to spend money to make money. We've had to invest in remodeling, outdoor premises expansion to be in compliance with social distancing guidelines because, as we know, indoors just it's not viable at 50% occupancy. We've had to invest in expensive PPE, contract environmental cleaning services to keep our employees and our community safe. And the list of these additional costs to be in business during this time, just they're going up, and it continue to go on and on and on. And now
That's 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. All this to say, without question, the Prosper Portland Small Business Relief Grant Fund has been a tremendous lifesaver and has helped many small businesses, including mine, stay afloat during this seemingly insurmountable time. And I just want to say thank you. I cannot articulate my sheer gratitude enough. My 30 employees and their families as well share my sentiments. So thank you to the good folks at Prosper Portland as well. You guys, city, county commissioners, and Mayor Wheeler, thank you.
Thank you, Kiana, and say hi to Rashad for me.
Will do.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Edward Knightley.
Edward, you there?
Good day. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we sure can. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Edward Knightley. I am a disabled gentleman living in affordable housing within Portland. And I also serve on the board of directors of REACH CDC, an affordable housing not-for-profit. I testify today as a living example that affordable housing with access to technology does work, because I had a stroke, which left me partly paralyzed. Because of the opportunity and stability of affordable housing, With access to technology, I can testify today as a contributing member of society rather than being unsheltered on the streets of Portland. I testify that when you are living on a low fixed income, technology and the internet is an essential utility. With access to technology, I can research resources, do my work for society, and prevent social isolation, especially during this pandemic. I ask you to support Proposal 563, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony, Edward.
Next is Emma Colburn.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you, Mayor and council members, and thank you to all the amazing testimonies that have come before me. I'm talking to you today specifically to ask you to support the arts and culture allocation of the Cares Act. Specifically, I'd like to encourage you to prioritize this act and the Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists that it provides support through. As an artist receiving funding from RAC this year, as well as in the past, I believe that artists are decision makers, always. They do not only make aesthetic decisions, they are people who make history by having a vision and putting their body on the line for that vision, even if they are the only one who believes it at first. This combination of innovative courage and imaginative curiosity is what makes artists visionary leaders with perspectives that are invaluable in unprecedented times such as these. For example, their clarity of vision must be included in conversations like ones we're having, such as how to reimagine public safety. Who better than an artist to imagine how to live together safely? As an ally, I am urging the city to invest in Black, Indigenous, and artists of color. These perspectives on what it means to live in Portland or to be an Oregonian deserve wider platforms in order to make our city more accessible for all people. As a parent of a young Black man, I am depending on your leadership in making this city a place where all parents of all children feel that their child's confidence, creativity, and compassion are nurtured. Supporting Black, Indigenous, and artists of color through the Cares Act is essential for this peace of mind, because putting resources behind leaders of color in the civil sector will definitely influence and inspire the next generation of leaders of color in Portland, while also providing the public and private sectors with perspectives deeply needed to connect to all members of the Portland metro region as they seek to create company and civic policies that leave no one behind. Only an artist can capture the desire and compassion of the heart, or the ingenuity and imagination of the mind. Business models thrive on this process of capturing desire, and organizations, thank you so much, such as yours, rely on this ingenuity as well. Individual artists, not only the organizations that represent them, need direct support to be able to be the voice that can act swiftly, align with vision in response to a moment without the approval of a governing body or board. And in particular, Black and Indigenous and people, artists of color, deserve fiscal support more than ever in this city at this time. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Emma. Appreciate your testimony.
And the last person I show is James Kelly.
James Kelly, last but not least, welcome.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Udaley, Commissioner Fitz, Commissioner Hardesty. I hope that my words find you and your family safe and healthy. Thank you for what you're doing in this crisis, including your leadership around the COVID recovery, as well as the social unrest. The pandemic and the social unrest are hurting and challenging many Portland residents, businesses, and communities, especially low income and people of color. My name is James Kelly. I'm the fundamental manager for Cairo's PDX. I'm here to talk to you about the importance of access of technology in order for children to learn. Limited access to technology has become an equity issue that is contributing to the achievement and opportunity gap. We must ensure that all residents, especially children of color, have access to technology infrastructure for learning. Kairos is gearing up for the fall, and we need to address this limited access to resources needed for online educations. For far too many Portlanders, especially Black and Brown students, theirs is a different story. They have limited access to technology and internet. The lack of reliable access, technology, and digital literacy for communities of color creates economic, social, and educational inequities. Our goal is to address the academic achievement, academic opportunity, and technology is needed for children of color. We hope that every student is connected and prepared to learn. I hope that you will support the $3.5 million to address the digital divide. Let's not exacerbate the disparity. Let's do something about it. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, James. Great way to end. Appreciate your testimony. All right, colleagues, so that concludes public testimony. Is that correct, Carla? That was the conclusion of public testimony?
That's correct, Mayor, yes.
All right, this is an opportunity for anybody who has any other questions or comments. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, everyone who took time today to come and share their support for various segments of this CARES Act. Because I will be ultimately a no vote on this package, this will come back to the City Council next week for its vote. But I wanted and appreciate a couple of minutes to say why. And what I want to share is when this pandemic first hit, the mayor invited me to the first economic impact task force meeting that Prosper led. And my very first words were, what a great opportunity for the city of Portland to build a more equitable city. I think many of us believe that we're going to go back to life as normal when this pandemic is up. And what we had, we will never have again. As someone who was married to a musician for 14 years in Portland, I know all about musicians and the very low pay and how they engage with venues. And so for me, there are parts of this proposal that I absolutely support. And I really wanted to get a package that we were all united around, and we were not able to get to that and get that one done and then talk about the other pieces. My priority continues to be people. And what I know is the economic devastation headed our way is not like anything we've seen before. And these CARES Act dollars is to address right now the needs of our community. And in my view, many of the allocations do not do that. And so I look forward to the vote next week. It means that it will take a little longer to get these dollars out, but I cannot support a package where fundamentally I have value differences between where we're investing dollars in this crisis. And so I thank my colleagues for their hard work. I thank the committee for their hard work, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Commissioner Udaley.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first I want to thank everyone that came to testify today. It was great hearing your voices and hearing your advocacy. I'm really happy with this package. I will say that I feel like I need a refresher on funding that's going to the county, because I definitely had some questions and concerns during the work session. But as far as the relief programs that have been created through our city process, I am very supportive. We need the state and the federal government to deliver real solutions to prevent a tidal wave of evictions and foreclosures that is going to make 2008 look like a walk in the park. These $114 million are a pittance. They will make very little difference, even if we devoted every single dollar to direct relief to households and for rent assistance, because the need is so much greater than $114 million. What we are doing is, especially through the relief to arts and culture organizations, nonprofit and privately owned venues, and small businesses, is preserving thousands of jobs and millions of dollars of economic activity, jobs that people who are renters will need to go back to continue paying their rent, and economic activity that the city depends on. So when we have a need that's much greater than our resources, we have to be very smart and strategic about how we spend those resources. And pouring it all into something like rent assistance will provide extremely short-term benefit. And ultimately, as this emergency wears on and people continue to be unable to pay their rent, it will have no long-term benefit, unlike supporting our arts and culture community and our small businesses. So look forward to the refresher on the county side of this funds, but in general, I'm very supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Udaley, and I'll just throw my 2 cents in. I look forward to supporting the package when this comes back to a vote next week. Reasonable people can disagree on whether this is exactly the right allocation. So I'm not casting judgment. I believe that this is a good allocation. It reflects what I think are the diversity of needs in the community, including direct household assistance. I'd remind people that 20.4 million is direct household assistance. In addition to that, there's 17 million that's going towards housing stability. That will in turn be matched by substantial state aid going to both of those issues. I also feel it was very important for us to support small businesses that are absolutely struggling during the economic ramifications of the COVID crisis. And as Commissioner Udaley just mentioned, household stability in part is about helping people pay the rent and make essential purchases, but it's also about ensuring that people continue to have access to employment, not only in the near term during the crisis, but over the long term as well. I can address some of the issues around the county. The county's total outlay is about $20 million. They had asked us for substantially more, but we ultimately agreed on the 20 million number. Just as a refresher, that is resource going directly towards the public health emergency and specifically to meet the governor's phase 1 opening requirements. And so we made a commitment, given that we have the lion's share of the resources, to work with the county to ensure that we would be able to do all of the activities required under phase 1. We also agreed early on that we would provide resources to the East Multnomah County jurisdictions like the city of Gresham to be able to do what they needed to do in order to address their public health crisis under phase 1 as well. I remain 100% committed to the arts and culture outlay as well as the digital divide outlay. If anything has changed during this COVID crisis, I think it's changed the way that we do work, the way that we educate our kids. This online presence is going to last much longer than, frankly, I would like it to. I agree with those who testified today who said they'd rather we be in person. I could not agree more. But realistically, for the foreseeable future, access to internet technology and web-based platforms and even the hardware like the Google Books is going to continue to be critically important. Our outlay is not substantial. It's not going to come anywhere near solving the problem, but it's an important step in the right direction. And so I will look forward to taking that step next week. So there being no further business on this, I want to thank everybody who testified, everybody who presented. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading.
Mayor Wheeler, this is Karen Moynihan, if I may.
Please.
Just for the record, this is actually a budget appropriation, and so upon second reading, if it passes with 3 votes, it would be effective immediately. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. We were doing some back and forth emails during the testimony, anticipating that we would not have unanimity and would not be able to put an emergency clause on today. We asked legal counsel for clarification. This is different than other ordinances because it is a budget allocation of a known resource. And so the delay here, if it passes next week, which it sounds like it will only be 1 week. And so it's important that people in the community know that there is not a substantial delay in terms of getting these resources out into the community. Next item is number 564, please.
Appoint Karen Arata and Ezra Hammer to the Portland Adjustment Committee for terms to expire July 14, 2024.
Colleagues, today I'm requesting council confirmation to appoint 2 new members to the Portland Adjustment Committee, Karen Arata and Ezra Hammer. The Portland Adjustment Committee is a decision-making body that considers appeals of adjustments to development standards of the Portland Zoning Code. Adjustments are processed through discretionary public land use review process. The committee is comprised of 7 individuals from the public, all of whom are appointed by the City Council. The committee members are required to have an expertise in one of 3 specialties. There are currently 2 vacancies in the specialty of urban design, architecture or landscape architecture, and 1 in the position of public at large. Douglas Hardy with the Bureau of Development Services will be presenting the nominations. And given the lateness of the hour, I'm going to ask that all of the presentations for the remainder of this council session be as long as necessary to convey the appropriate information, but as short as possible. Go for it, Douglas.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and members of the council. So as Mayor Wheeler indicated, the Portland Adjustment Committee consists of 7 members, and those 7 members basically represent different expertise that are needed for the committee. This particular committee does hear appeals of particular land use reviews that seek to modify some standards in the zoning code. So whether that's things like building height, landscaping, building setbacks, that type of thing. And as the mayor indicated, we have currently 2 vacancies on the committee, one in the urban design architecture category and the second in the public at large position. The Bureau of Development Services has worked with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, as well as the Bureau of Development Services Equity Office. We've sent out requests for interest across the city, basically to every land use committee, every neighborhood association in the city. So we've basically covered the city. And we are here today basically to present 2 candidates to be appointed to the committee. The first is Karen Arata in the urban design architecture position, and Ezra Hammer to the public at large position. And I think all the council members have the background for these members. Just really briefly, Karen is a licensed architect in both Oregon and Washington, currently employed as a TriMet assistant project manager. She previously was a sole proprietor for her business and has worked in a number of other architecture firms over the last 19 years. Excuse me. She has 2 undergrad degrees from the University of Pennsylvania, as well as a Master's of Architecture at University of Washington. And she has been involved in various neighborhood activities, including with the Irvington Neighborhood Association at one time. The second candidate that we are putting forth today in the public at large position is Ezra Hammer. Ezra is the Vice President for Policy and Governmental Affairs at the Home Builders Association of Portland. As you can see in the paperwork you have, he's had a pretty multifaceted career in land use development, including working as a land use planner with a Los Angeles council person, where he collaborated with diverse community stakeholders to identify neighborhood-specific needs related to development proposals. And in his current work with the Home Builders Association, he in part focuses on identifying ways to advance housing affordability, in part through his coordination through nonprofit housing advocates.
Hey, Doug, so eminently qualified.
Yes.
These individuals, and we appreciate it. And
okay.
The council has on the record all of their background information, resumes, and they would never have made it to this stage if they weren't incredibly well qualified individuals. I see that Karen is on the line. Is Ezra on the line today?
They are both here, yes.
Okay, perhaps each would like to just make a brief statement about their involvement on the adjustment committee, and then I think we're ready to approve their appointments.
Great, thank you. So could the
Karen, do you want to go first?
It looks like Ezra may be going first.
Okay, go ahead, Ezra.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to serve the city that I've grown to love. It's a true honor to live and to work in the city of Portland. And I am extremely appreciative of all of the hard work that you do and grappling with the critical issues of our time. So I look forward to serving the citizens of Portland with honor and respect, and to ensure that everyone is treated with the dignity that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ezra. It's good to hear your voice again. Good morning, Karen. Good afternoon, actually.
Is it already afternoon? Good afternoon, everyone. Now I remember I had to unmute in 2 locations. I will keep it short in the interest of time. I too am very honored to be able to serve for the city of Portland. And really, I'll just keep it that short and sweet. I feel greatly honored and I'm humbled for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
And we're incredibly pleased that you're willing to step up, both you and Ezra. Thank you for that. Colleagues will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Hardesty moves. Commissioner Daly seconds the report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Daly?
Thank you for serving. Aye.
Fritz?
It's nice to have these 2 nominations together as a pair, with somebody with a neighborhood background and somebody with a development background. Obviously, both of them qualified in both areas. And so that's good nominations. And I thank you for your service. Aye.
Wheeler?
Yeah, these are 2 great individuals, and I really appreciate the willingness of both of you to serve. I also want to thank you, Doug, and I want to thank Rebecca Esau for the thoughtful recruitments to this committee. I know that there were a lot of staff discussions to make sure that we had exceptional candidates that can review these requests with the entire city's best interests in mind. So thank you for that. I'm very happy to vote aye. The report is accepted. The appointments are approved. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Carla, can you read items 565 and 567 together, please?
Yes. 565, authorize application to Environmental Protection Agency for a grant in the amount of up to $300,000 to fund a portion of the organic waste receiving facility to be constructed for the Bureau of Environmental Services. 567, authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the Columbia Boulevard Wastewater Treatment Plant Organic Waste Receiving Facility, project number E10804, for an estimated amount of $7,821,000.
Very good. And colleagues, just to clarify, 565 is an emergency ordinance. 567 is actually a second reading. Last week, Environmental Services staff presented on the organic waste receiving facility project. The Bureau will take commercial food waste that would otherwise go to landfills and convert it to biogas that Environmental Services will then use as renewable energy. It's a great partnership between Metro and the City of Portland, and it helps us meet our climate action goals. This grant before us today authorizes the Bureau to apply for an EPA anaerobic digestion project grant to help fund a portion of the organic waste receiving facility. Paul Sudo, Environmental Services Engineer Manager, is here to briefly talk about the grant. Paul, welcome, and thank you for bringing this forward again.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. Just quickly on the grant, it's a funding opportunity for projects that support the EPA's goals of diverting food waste from landfills and beneficially recovering the energy potential utilizing anaerobic digestion, basically so we can get renewable energy as stated in the introduction. So this aligns very well with our goals with the organic waste project, so we feel it's very timely. And as mentioned in the introduction, we plan on applying for the up to $300,000 amount to help offset our project costs. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the grant opportunity.
Colleagues, any questions? I don't see any. Carla, is there any public testimony on item 565?
No one registered, Mayor.
Very good. Item 565 is an emergency ordinance. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 567 is the second reading. Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you for the presentation. Next up is going back to 566.
Amend contract with Brown and Caldwell, Inc. for professional engineering services for the Forest Avenue wastewater pump station remodel project number E10611 in the amount of $317,072.
All right, Portland trivia fans, listen up. The Bureau of Environmental Services operates nearly 100 pump stations around the city of Portland, which moves wastewater to the city's treatment plants. In 2016, City Council authorized a contract with Brown and Caldwell Incorporated for the Forest Avenue wastewater pump station remodel project. This ordinance amends that contract due to the new zoning requirements around environmental protection. Here today to give a brief presentation are Cyrus Osborne and Paul Sudo from Environmental Services. Greetings.
Good afternoon again. For the record, my name is Paul Sudo, Engineering Manager with BES. Just a quick intro in the interest of time, this project is a part of basically a larger program we have to routinely reinvest in the nearly 100 pump stations we have to provide reliable sewage treatment for the residents of Portland. And I'll hand it over to Cyrus for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
All right, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Can everyone hear me all right and see my screen that I'm sharing? Yes? All right. Like the mayor and Paul said, we're here today to request authorization of an amendment of greater than 25% of the original contract value for our contract with Brown and Caldwell for engineering services for Forest Avenue Pump Station. This slide shows the project location, both the existing pump station site as well as the new location, which is across Forest Avenue. As a point of reference, the Portland Metropolitan Expo Center is northeast of the project site, just under the blown up plan sheet view. There are multiple factors that went into the decision to relocate this pump station, but one of the main reasons was that the existing site was recently rezoned from industrial to open space and is in an environmental protection zone. So for some background, first, this photo shows some of the surrounding area in the environmental zone. The site is small and difficult to access. The mechanical and electrical components of the station, which were installed when the station was constructed in 1974, are beyond their useful life and is in need of an upgrade. Given that background, the original primary objectives of the project were to improve pump station performance, reliability, access, and safety, and bring into current standards for operability and maintainability. As previously mentioned, in 2016, we entered into a contract with Brown and Caldwell to provide engineering services toward that end. So far, the project has reached the 60% design phase. All site investigations and analysis and code and zoning review have been completed. The project objectives are largely unchanged. As far as the contract status, we have processed 2 previous amendments for a total of $23,000. And so that brings us to amendment number 3, which is what we're here to discuss today. As the mayor mentioned, due to zoning, we do have to relocate the pump station to meet our project objectives. And because of that, we have to design utility extensions. That wasn't in the original contract. It is in this amendment. Also in working toward our land acquisition with Metro, who is the owner of the land. They've let us know that they need to put a road in the future in the area we were planning on locating our easement. So we had to adjust that a little bit. That's required some design work. There have been additional items that have come up during the analysis and information gathering that we performed during pre-design that have driven some other additional work, including replacement of an existing air release valve, to mitigate essentially water hammer in the force main, which is the pipe that conveys sewage out of the pump station. Additionally, we've incorporated some additional maintenance features that have become standard for pump stations since this project started. And we're also further reviewing some of the structural work that we're going to be doing in an effort to reduce construction costs related to those seismic upgrades. This slide shows the 7 certified firms that have been certified by the Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity that are participating on this project. Overall, we have a 38% participation by certified firms after the amendment. And included in that is 33% participation by firms that are owned by folks who represent diverse communities. So just looking ahead, so this amendment for $317,000 would bring the total contract value to just over $1.4 million. Currently, the confidence level associated with the contract value is high. The total approved budget is $8.7 million. The confidence rating associated with the project budget currently is moderate. And that is just based on where we are in the project. As we go forward, that rating will increase. We anticipate.
So I think that that's good enough unless anybody has specific questions. That's a very thorough presentation. Anybody have any further questions on this item?
Excuse me, Mayor, I have one question.
Please ask.
And it's based on the last thing that Cyrus said.
Yeah.
You said that you have moderate confidence in a proposal that is $8.7 million. So as a city councilor, am I to expect you to come back and say that it's going to be $4 million more, and then you'll have greater confidence?
No, so for this, so I want to clarify that with what we're approving today, the level of confidence with this amendment is high. The overall project budget, because we're at 60% design, that confidence, how far along we are in the process, dictates the level of confidence. I do think this is a conservative number for this. I think that we will, I do think that this project budget, which already has been fully approved, will be sufficient for this project.
This is Paul Suto. I can also add to that to hopefully address Commissioner Hardesty's question a bit further. We plan on being back before council before we go into construction, because the bulk of that $8.7 million is for the construction phase. So once design is completed, we'll be back again to ordinance to request to advertise and award a contract. So we're not seeking approval today for that $8.7 million. If that helps.
No, that absolutely helps. I greatly appreciate that. I just didn't want us to leave this conversation with the public assuming that, that was like a guesstimation of what the cost would be. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I had.
You're muted, Mayor.
Dang it. Carla, is there any public testimony on this or first of all, any further questions from my colleagues? Not seeing any, is there public testimony on this item?
No one registered, Mayor.
Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. It moves to second reading. Colleagues, we have 11 more items to go. So again, I'm going to ask for people to expedite presentations. 568, please. Second reading.
Mayor, couldn't we move some of those to this afternoon?
Let's see where we are by say 10 minutes after 1. Let's get through as many of these as we can.
Very good.
568, please. Second reading.
Authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Goose Hollow Sewer Rehabilitation Project number E10683 through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Colleagues, we've heard presentation on this. There's been opportunity for public testimony. This is the second reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please read 569.
Approve settlement agreement in the matter of the City of Portland versus Monsanto et al. And authorize expenditure of settlement funds.
Colleagues, the City of Portland joined many local governments across the nation in suing Monsanto. Monsanto manufactured chemicals between the 1930s and the 1970s, which polluted the Willamette River and many other bodies of water around the United States. This ordinance approves the city's settlement with Monsanto, and it puts us on a course to utilize those funds for environmental justice causes, prioritizing Black, Indigenous, and communities of color that have been disproportionately impacted by the environmental contamination. Before we move forward, I'd like to bring forward a substitute ordinance strengthening language around Indigenous communities. And I want to thank Laura John for her feedback, in particular on this aspect of the ordinance. With that, I move the substitute.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Udaly. Call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The substitute's on the table. Here to discuss the substitute is Nancy Klinger, the city's senior deputy attorney, and Yvonne Berg from Environmental Services is also here to answer any questions that people have. Nancy, take it away.
Okay, good afternoon. I'll try to keep this as quick as I can. The ordinance before you is to approve a settlement with Monsanto Company and Solutia, Inc. I'll provide a very brief discussion of the nature of the case, describe what the settlement does, and the next steps in the process. In March 2016, Counsel authorized the city attorney to file a legal action against Monsanto and pursue the action to conclusion in the best interests of the city. As the mayor mentioned, Monsanto was the sole producer of PCBs, a toxic chemical that has become a common pollutant in our waterways. Pursuant to the resolution, the city retained outside counsel on a contingency basis and filed suit claiming several torts, namely product liability for a defective product, a product that creates a public nuisance by being present in the waterway, negligence for putting the product into the stream of commerce without adequate warning or instructions on safe handling. With the city filed suit, we have been in motion and discovery practice in the interim 4 years. That motion and discovery practice has been fairly extensive. Some of the rulings have been favorable to the city and some of them have not. This has been litigated in the U.S. District Court here in Portland. During this time, 12 other jurisdictions filed similar suits. They're in California, Washington, and Maryland. These various cases are also in motion and discovery. They have trial dates set, but none of them have come to trial. Some of those trials are fast approaching, and that likely prompted our settlement discussions. What this settlement does, it ends the city's litigation in a favorable manner, meaning that the city will receive a payment from Monsanto. The proposed settlement with Monsanto resolves the city case against them by creating a class action that resolves not just the city's claim, but all cities, counties, and port districts that are required by the Clean Water Act to have a municipal stormwater permit for the discharge of stormwaters and that are located in watersheds that have been identified by EPA as being impaired for PCBs. That's about 2,500 jurisdictions across the country. To settle all the claims, Monsanto is placing $550 million in an escrow fund that will be apportioned among the class members, including the city. Attorney fees of note are paid by Monsanto from a separate fund and do not diminish this fund. The funds will be distributed based on formula and other factors that a special master applies. That includes whether the city incurred costs by being an original plaintiff in the litigation, which Portland did, whether the jurisdiction has contaminated waterways or has a Clean Water Act permit that requires special actions to manage PCBs, because that waterway was recently listed for PCBs and the city meets some of those criteria. And that all class members will receive a certain amount for sampling and analysis of their stormwater discharge. The final apportionment will be performed by a special master who is agreed to by both sides and approved by the court. It'll be conducted over about the next 6 months, and then the funds will be distributed over about 4 years. In exchange, the city and the other class members, unless a jurisdiction decided to opt out, releases Monsanto from claims regarding their distribution and manufacture of PCBs. Let me be really clear. This does not release them from Superfund claims or claims regarding the discharge or disposal of PCBs. It doesn't release the third parties who may have bought these PCB products and then improperly disposed of them. This is a release about Monsanto as the manufacturer of a product. So the next steps. If council approves this settlement agreement, the city is named as a class action plaintiff in the action in a U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. The court must approve of the settlement agreement. The special master reviews the applications of the class members to receive funds. The court approves the apportionment of how the funds will be distributed over the course of the next 4 years, but it is specified that 40% of the funds will be dispersed in the first year and 20% in each of the next 3 years. The city will not know the total funds that it will receive until the court approves the apportionment plan, but we do expect that within this calendar year. The settlement does not require or direct that the funds be used in any particular manner by the city. The ordinance before you reflects council's expectations that the funds be focused on Black, Indigenous, people of color, immigrant, and refugee communities, which have been disproportionately impacted by environmental contamination. And the process for determining the uses of the funds be co-created with those impacted communities. BES is tasked with co-creation of that process and returning to council for approval of the plan to use the funds. The ordinance does not specify how the funds will be used. It will depend on the outcome of that public process. So that's the end of my presentation. If you have questions,
Colleagues, any questions for Nancy? Thank you, Nancy. Colleagues, any questions? That was very thorough and appreciated. Carla, is there any public testimony on this item?
No one registered.
This is an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
It is my hope that we work in partnership with a diverse group of frontline communities as we start talking about how we engage this. And I wonder how this will support the work of PSEF as those first RFPs go out at the end of the year. I hope that we coordinate activities so we're having the biggest impact on our environment and climate mitigation that's taking place, because I can see a scenario where we are working at counter purposes on work that we all support. And so I absolutely support the focus of these settlement dollars, but my cautionary tale is everybody's using the same language and everybody's talking to the same people. And it is my expectation that we are going to have outcomes that will be radically different than outcomes that we've had in the past, as we have limited who has access to these funds and these opportunities. So I vote yes, but I will be paying attention to how this process moves forward, and will be very happy to support efforts of engaging as many voices as possible in this dialogue about how we invest, once again, another limited pot of money. Thank you.
Udaley.
Well, I strongly supported this action against Monsanto to hold them accountable, and I'm happy to support this. The settlement shows that when we fight, we can win, even against massive multinational corporations. So I very happily vote aye.
Fritz.
Well, congratulations to Nancy and our legal team for getting us this settlement. I appreciate all of your work. Aye.
Wheeler.
I also want to thank Nancy for your leadership and your advocacy on this. I also want to remember that Nick Fish was a strong proponent of going after Monsanto. In fact, I believe he was the one who got the ball rolling on this. And I think he would have strongly approved the work that you've done, Nancy, and he would have appreciated this settlement here today. I'm happy to vote aye, and the ordinance is approved. Thank you. Next up is item number 570.
Approve findings to authorize an exemption for a class of public improvement contracts from the competitive bidding requirements, and authorize the use of the alternative contracting method of job order contracting for alterations construction services.
Lester Spiegel is here to very briefly describe this item. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler. Good afternoon, City Council. My name, for the record, is Lester Spittler. I'm the city's Chief Procurement Officer. The legislation before you today is an exemption from the competitive low bid process for construction projects that are categorized as building alterations work, roofing, and a category we are calling MEP, which stands for Mechanical, Electrical, and Plumbing Services. These services are primarily for the facilities division within the Office of Management and Finance, but they will be open to all of the infrastructure bureaus for these types of needs. So what is job order contracting? It is a alternative delivery method. It's really an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. We go out with a request for proposal that has individual unit prices where contractors respond with a multiplier on top of the unit. We also are asking other criteria questions such as, what is their commitment to workforce? And this specifically came out of a briefing with Commissioner Hardesty earlier this week. So thank you again for your time, Commissioner Hardesty. We'll be asking contractors who respond to the RFP, in return for getting this exclusive work, if you will, for 5 years, what sort of efforts are you going to do to make sure that you hire a stable workforce, focusing on women and minorities in the trades that they'll be performing? And how can we create journey level positions as a result of this work? So apprenticeship usually takes, anywhere from 4 to 6 years. These contracts are 5 years. If these contractors are able to perform a stable workforce as a result of this work, we're going to be asking them to commit to certain actions and efforts, and then we'll be asking for reporting as a result of that. So the value of this is it really encourages collaboration between us, the owner, and contractors that are awarded these contracts. It's an efficiency, it's transparent, and it's auditable. The benefits to the contractors is it's really a relationship-based contract with the city. They participate in the scoping process for jobs. It creates a steady flow of work and levels out their peaks and valleys in between their bigger projects. It's an opportunity to keep crews fully utilized. These contracts are 3 years with 2-year options. Good performance is rewarded with more work, and this ultimately helps contractors build their bond capacity. If you recall, a year ago, we asked Council for a similar exemption for job order contracts for asphalt and concrete work. Here are the 8 contracts that we awarded as a result of that work. The primary users of those contracts are PBOT and Parks and Recreation. Here is the amount of work that those contractors have gotten in the past year. You can see the little gold diamond is the number of projects on the right, and then the amount of overall work that they've gotten is on the left. So, we're trying to do a good job of spreading the wealth, and those contracts that are embracing this new way of doing business. Those contractors are tending to get more business, but it's been successful all around. We've certainly had some hiccups here and there. We've had some issues that we've had to resolve, but we've been able to collaboratively do those with the contractors. So for this specific RFP before you today, we've already conducted lots of outreach. On June 17th, we presented to the Latino Built membership meeting, and we similarly presented to the Professional Business Development Group. On July 1st, we presented to the National Association for Minority Contractors at the Oregon chapter. And on July 10th, we presented to the Oregon Association for Minority Entrepreneurs at their Architect and Engineers meeting. We have an information meeting next Thursday, the 23rd, that we've invited all interested parties to. At that information session, we'll be walking through how to respond to the solicitation and what it will look like if contractors are awarded for engaging in work and building those price proposals and collectively developing the scopes of work. So I'm here happy to answer any questions about this, but that is my presentation. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Lester. Any questions for Lester from my colleagues?
Mayor, I have no questions, but I just want to thank Lester for actually rethinking how this RFP could actually take people from pre-apprenticeship to journeyman, especially if it's a 5-year contract. And we're never going to get those kind of outcomes unless we actually write it into the RFP. So I think this is an opportunity for us to really start getting the outcomes we say we want with these contract set aside programs. So, and as Lester knows, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on it to see whether or not we're having the outcomes we want. But honestly, if it's not in the RFP, it won't happen. So I am very excited that Lester took it as an opportunity to improve this program rather than, not. So thank you, Lester, for being open. And I look forward to what we get because we make this investment. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Carla, is there any public testimony on this item?
No one registered, Mayor.
All right, very good. And I just want to say that I'm glad, Lester, that we're going to be expanding the job order contracting program. I think it's really good, and it's been working well for the categories of projects that the council authorized the program for last year. So I really appreciate that update. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you. Next up is 571, a second reading.
Approve application under the multiple unit limited tax exemption program under the inclusionary housing program for Pepsi Blocks Phase 1A, Building A, located at 827 Northeast 27th Avenue.
Very good. Thank you, colleagues. This is the second reading. We've already heard a presentation and had an opportunity for public testimony. Is there any further business on this item? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Next up is 572.
Authorize Portland Parks and Recreation to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet to facilitate construction of its Red Line Max capital improvements and related park improvements on park property at Gateway Green Park.
All right. We have Dennis James here from PPR's Property and Business Development Group here on the line to answer any questions anybody may have. Hi, Dennis.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Mayor.
Colleagues, any questions on this item? Seeing none, Carla, is there any public testimony on this item?
There is none, Mayor.
Very good. Call the roll.
Hardesty.
I appreciate the information that I was able to get in advance, Dennis. Thank you so much for being available to Derek to answer some of my questions. I vote aye.
Thank you, Daly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, like the mayor acknowledged, Commissioner Fisher, on the last item, I can never see the words Gateway Green without thinking of Nick and the work that he did there. Also, Linda Robinson and the good folks out there. So hopefully these light rail improvements will also have some benefits for the park. Aye.
Wheeler.
Gateway Green Park, of course, is a very special and unique park in our city's park system. It's currently undergoing construction to add all kinds of new amenities, paths, drinking fountains, restrooms, benches, and more. And one of the things that really makes Gateway Green unique is its location between I-84 and I-205, just north of the Gateway Transit Center. And it's also directly adjacent to TriMet's Max Red Line, which is, by the way, the only part of TriMet's system that is single-tracked. TriMet's doing their own construction project in the area, which includes adding a second track. And there's been these conversations, therefore, between PPR and TriMet on how to best coordinate these two projects. And so this will solidify the IGA between TriMet and the city of Portland to figure out, and well, not figure out, but solidify the roles between both the city of Portland as well as TriMet. And so this is a great interjurisdictional partnership on a fabulous park asset. I'm happy to vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. And Dennis, thanks for all your great work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much.
573.
Amend evaluation of applications for dwelling units to make technical clarifications.
Excuse me, Mayor, it's 111. Excuse me, it's 111 and I'm hungry.
Why don't, Commissioner Daly, just let me clarify something. On item 573, it says 15 minutes requested for 574 and 575. Or do 573 and 74 go together?
Yes.
Sorry, Mayor, that's the clerk.
Why don't we do this? Call 575 first, Carla.
575, amend Title 17 and Transportation Administrative Rules to update and add clarification for the permitting and conditioning of driveways.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pulling this back to my office to be rescheduled in light of our time crunch today.
Without objection, call 576, Carla. Second.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet for Friends of Frog Ferry funding in the amount of $40,000 as part of local match for the State Transportation Improvement Fund's discretionary grant in the amount of $200,000 to develop the Frog Ferry.
Colleagues, this is the second reading. We've heard a presentation and public testimony. Is there further discussion on this item? Seeing none, call the roll.
Hardesty.
I am very happy to hear that the Frog Ferry now will be a nonprofit versus a for-profit. I remove any objections I have. I look forward to seeing the research. I vote aye.
Udaly.
So last year, when we weren't able to fund Frog Ferry's requests, PBOT agreed to provide a small amount of matching funds if they did the work needed to secure grants to move the feasibility study forward. They held up their end of the bargain, and I feel it's our obligation to hold up ours. I vote aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Yeah, I want to thank Commissioner Udaly for bringing this back, and what you just said is exactly right. And I see Susan Bladholm is joining us on the call. I want to thank you, Susan, for your continued advocacy and leadership. I think it's a bold vision, and I want to thank you for it. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Commissioner Udaly, do you have any objections if we move 573 and 574 to the front of our 2 p.m. agenda?
I just need to make sure that Matt Scheibold is still available because we were hustling to make this work for him today.
Matt, can you hang around for about 45 minutes?
Yeah, I can come on right at 2 o'clock.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll move 73 and 74 right to the front of the 2 p.m. agenda. And with that, thank you, everybody. We are adjourned till 2 p.m.